Oh wait, shit, hang on. Hang on, stop the music, stop the music, stop the music. I forgot, hang on. Wait, actually, start the music back up, but... Okay, maybe... Hang on. The music is in a quantum state. We will not observe it for the time being, but it may be there. It shouldn't be there. It's not supposed to be there. Listen, hang on. I gotta... Where's my button? There we go. Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Paps, the right-saying VTuber and an artist. And today I learned that half of the video... So this is kind of crazy, actually. So, I do have a VOD channel, right? And in that VOD channel, I usually post, like, the purpose of a VOD channel is to archive the streams that I've put through. And I've noticed that, like, half of them were overnight marked with potential earning limitations. Not because of a... Hang on, where... Yeah, not because of like the, let's say, typical background music is coming through, but because they actually, wait, hang on, I'm taking a look at it now again. So, but the other week I checked the potential earning limitations on notices on a couple of the videos that I have uploaded, and it actually had whatchamacallit. Hang on. I should probably start drawing. I'm looking at my YouTube channel and not actually drawing, which is not ideal. Here we go. Okay. I took a look at my YouTube channel the other day, and it had a bunch of earning limitation notices because of the fact that I used that... Hang on, like in the starting screen. Yeah, you can see it here. I use that specific track, and that's not it's posted on this website called like Audionautics or something like that, right? And it's supposed to be like freeware. Okay, freeware isn't the right term. Royalty-free music, right? And so that means that it's usually not like something that can get you like copyrighted or anything, as long as you use proper attribution. And for some reason, YouTube said that, hey, you're not using you're using copyrighted material. I'm like, I know, but I cite the source of the music. Like, I'm telling you where I found it. That was a deal. We had a deal. But yeah, the good news is that it seems like that's been sorted while I wasn't looking. So that's fine. I'm happy with that. It's much better than how my Twitter's doing. I'm never getting that shit back at this point, by the way. I just thought I should let you all know that my Twitter is never coming back, I think. Like, unless we somehow get, like, radically new management, and then I file an appeal, and then they decide that, yeah, you know what, this was bogus, I'm probably never getting that shit back. So, hit up my Blue Sky, yo. No, but really. I'd say hit up my Tumblr, but honestly, I'm not... I think Blue Sky is probably like the next most professional for a given value of professional social media that I have. I'd get an Instagram, but not today. Not today. The ruffle's a little bit bigger than this. Hang on, I gotta like expand it. Yeah, that's the stuff. Yeah, I did a couple of edits to this while I was offline. I'm still actually not very happy with this pose. I feel like the negative space that it's leaving is excessive. I don't know, maybe what I need to do is like just need to rework this from the ground up. I think trying to hammer this, because I feel like this could almost sort of work as a charm pose. Like, if I was trying to design a charm, like a reversible charm or something, this could work really well. But I'm starting to think that maybe I just need to try something else. So let's do that. Boom. And then let's just select a random one here. How about... I was literally the first one I landed on is this one that's in despair, so maybe not that one. Ooh, this one's kind of fun, actually. I don't know. I do remember there was like a pose website that I got recommended a couple times on my feed. Let me see if I can bring that up somewhere. No, that's okay. So the pose search one. Hang on. Let me pull this up on the Jumbotron. So the pose searching website seems to be for. Hang on. Let me just try this out. So hang on. Joint slash body part face. Oh, okay. So. Okay, yeah, perfect. This is more or less what I was like. Whoa. That's crazy. Oh, this one's fun. Okay, yeah. All right. Is there like one for the whole body? I'm kind of nervous to click on crotch, so let's not do that. What about left knee? That one sounds innocent enough. Okay, so it's a left knee from various angles. That's good. This skeleton looks funny. Okay, ooh, this is a really good picture, actually. Let me tuck that away into my pocket for another day. You know what? I was kind of wondering which one of these guys' knees this was. It's the one on the far right. All right. No, these are really fitting the vibe, though. Or wait, maybe I need to... Nope, that's not bending the right way. Oh dear. Not exactly suitable for what I'm looking for. Maybe I can just reset this. I don't know. I kind of want like almost like a squarish kind of pose to fit in with the canvas, because the canvas I've chosen is also kind of square. Oh, this is kind of fun. This one's just blank. I wonder what's up with that. Oh, this one's cute. Yeah, this one crossing the... I was about to say crossing the street, but that's not really a street, is it? Also, I don't think I actually put my go live notification... Oh wait, no, yes I did. Yes, I did. Good work, brain. Okay, back to this, though. Yeah, the issue with this one is that there's not really a random pose button, which is kind of what I need. Or at least what I would benefit from. I don't know, what do people normally do for poses? I feel like that's been like a big issue that I've had recently, is that I have just no... Unless I'm being asked to like specifically do something, I feel like my creativity for poses is very feeble. That or over ambitious. What's this one about? No, that doesn't really fit the vibe of the character, I feel. It is a cute pose, though. Wait, this one could be really cute, actually. Yeah. If we kind of move, maybe if we almost like move the arm a little bit forward and then up a little bit so that it kind of fits with the eye here. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, this'll work. This'll work. Okay. I should drink some water. Yeah. I've been talking I talked a little bit about the recent developments I've had in my house where I've just been learning to cold brew stuff. And again, it's been going really well for me. This elbow feels off. It's a little better, but hang on, maybe I can just kind of like rasterize this and then use the Gaussian blur tool to make it a little bit more bearable. But yeah, a fun new development in my recent experimentation with cold brewing is that I've kind of come upon some unforeseen consequences with my activities in this regard, because when I started doing this, it was still like fairly cold and dry. You know, the humidity was fairly manageable. But now we're in the full swing of summer, right? The humidity is intense. There's no escape. There's no like easy method of overcoming it. And the kind of consequences it's had is that I have had to learn very quickly that wet coffee grounds and wet tea leaves have some drastic impacts on the when you kind of like leave them to ferment a little bit inside of a trash bag. And like I said, this hasn't really been a problem before because I've just been able to throw the trash out on time, or like the ambient humidity has been such that I don't really need to worry about the kind of long-term storage impacts of plant waste. But this time it was fairly dire. It was like a tiny rainforest had developed inside of my bin. So today I actually tried a little something to remedy that. After extracting the liquid gold from the coffee grounds and the tea leaves, I put the tea leaves and the coffee grounds inside of I put them in a tin that I usually use for baking small loaves of bread. And I just set the oven to broil, and I let her rip. And it actually had very much the intended effect, right? It dried out the grounds and the tea leaves very, very efficiently. And I was very happy with the outcome of that. What I wasn't super jazzed about was the fact that I don't know what I was expecting. I was very optimistically hoping that the kind of mix, the kind of potpourri that I had made in the broiler would create a pleasant scent, perhaps almost sort of earthy and, dare I say, warm kind of scent, you know? Because if you think about it, jasmine tea leaves should smell good. Coffee smells great. So if you put those in an oven, they should smell fairly good. Perhaps that was naive of me to think, but it was where my heart was at. Anyway, this is all to say that when I activated the broiler, what I expected was like perhaps a sort of earthy vegetative smell, but what I got was instead like an intense scent of mulch. I think that's the closest thing that I can approximate it to. It straight up smelled like mulch. So I guess I guess I am going to use this trick in the future, but I don't know. I would prefer it to not smell so mulchy. I'll also have to figure out how to more efficiently sort out the leaves and the grounds beforehand, because what I found was that because I extracted the coffee first and then the tea, the sort of topsoil of this potpourri was all tea leaf, and beneath it was the coffee grounds. And I feel like the coffee grounds are able to retain moisture a little bit more efficiently than the leaves. So I think maybe the coffee grounds will go on top, or I should try to at least mix them to a little bit more. In the future. But that was the main thrust of it. New tech discovered, but it came at a cost. And you know, the good thing is that it wasn't like a sticky smell. You know what I mean? Like it kind of dissipated shortly after I turned off the broiler. Actually, that might be something to consider. I might get better effects if I just use a normal oven, but that takes a while to kind of load up. The broiler is very efficient and very good at what it does, which is heating things up violently and quickly. It's a very it's a very excessive process. I don't know. I like the broiler. I feel like the broiler will respect you if you respect it. You know what I mean? It's definitely not for the faint of heart. I feel like the neckline's almost lower than this. Or maybe, hang on. Maybe what I need is more like, sort of like this. Like where it's, I don't know. Where, okay, so like the sleeves would be over the dress itself. You know what I mean? I don't know if this is a real type of clothing. It probably is. Okay, and then that's gonna go like this. These ruffles are kind of hard as hell to draw from any angle that isn't head on. I feel like it's giving me a good impression though. Like, hang on, maybe I should look up. Hang on. So maybe wrist ruffle. Okay, these are cute. Wait, check this out. Check this out. Right? These are very, very cute. These gloves are real nice. Okay, okay. These gloves are really cool. I remember reading a kind of, I hesitate to call it a meet cute, the kind of story of how, what was her name? Hang on, I gotta Google her real quick. What was her name? Was this Jacqueline Rook? What? Let's see. Okay, so I remember there was a story of somebody meeting. I don't remember if it. I think it was one of his partners who was an artist in her own right. Cannot remember her name right now, but she was associated with Picasso. And the story of how they met is that Picasso saw her at a cafe wearing these kinds of gloves. And she very gingerly took them off and started playing, what's the name of that game? That game where you, like, you take a knife and then you, like, stab it in between the gaps of your fingers. 5-finger chop or something like that? Anyway, she started doing that just to kind of pass the time and leaving pockmarks on the table. And she wasn't very good at it, or at least she seemed to be satisfied with not being perfect at it, because by the time she finished, she was very much bleeding by the time she finished. So, and she put the gloves back on, and Picasso saw this and was like, "God damn." Which, you know, fair. I would also have that reaction. It sucks I cannot remember her name right now, though. I feel her name. I want to remember her name right now. What was her name? Hang on. Maybe I can use some keywords. Or something. Yada yada yada. What was her name? Hang on, maybe I can go to Picasso's page and look in the personal life section. Yada yada yada. Dora Maar. Was Dora Maar? I think it might have been. Oh yeah, here we go. No, her name was Dora Maar. Yeah, so okay, Dora Maar, French photographer and painter, pioneering surrealist artist and an anti-fascist activist, very based. From 1935 to 43, Maar was in a relationship with Pablo Picasso and was depicted in a number of paintings. And down here we have the story. She was captivated by him, but they did not formally meet. The story of their first encounter was told by the writer Jean-Paul Crespel. She kept driving a small pointed penknife between her fingers into the wood of the table. Sometimes she missed, and a drop of blood appeared between the roses embroidered on her black gloves. Picasso would ask Dora to give him the gloves and would lock them up in the showcase he kept for his mementos. So Picasso's a weird pervert, right? But on the other hand, I kind of get it. All right, but yeah, that was the story that I recalled. Her name was Dora Maar. Now I know. Now I remember. Also, I got so distracted because I was trying to look up the wrist truffle thing. Okay, so they do. Okay, at least these ones do just seem to go like that. Okay. Yeah, I can handle that. Okay. Actually, would that be a better call than... Nah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why this one over here came out so effortless, and then this one over here was a life and death struggle. I guess that's how it is sometimes. Maybe I should flip the canvas just to make sure it all looks okay. Okay, so for this one, we can probably realign the edges of this just to be a little bit more like that, because I just think that looks more even, and then also... Okay. So for this one, I think I almost need to make it more conical this way, and then like that. Yep, that's looking right. Likewise, we need to make this part more flat. I should shoot Lee up a message. It's been a while since we talked, so I'd like to hang out with him again. I don't know. Summer has been strange this year. I feel like there's both a lot to do and not a whole lot to do. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like in earlier months, I had a couple of shows that I could go to. I had, like, some events I could participate in, and that's not really true of July so far. Like, there were a couple of shows back in June, but in July it feels like there's very little to look forward to. I mean, there is Art Fight, but that's... I got a lot going on this year, so it's a little bit less... I'm not feeling quite as enthused, but, you know, I'd still want to participate. It's not that I'm not feeling enthused because I don't want to get into the spirit of things. It's that I'm not feeling enthused because I feel like I should be doing a whole bunch of other things. But at the same time, like, time management is a funny thing. There are things that you ought to do, and things that you absolutely need to do. Things that you want to do, and things that are maybe... that you want to do, but aren't things that you ought to do or need to do. And I find myself in a situation where I have a lot of things that I ought to do, but not very few, but only a limited number of things that I absolutely need to do. Maybe because of this, I've come to, you know, I had a little bit of a chat with some people close to me to work through the emotions on this. And... which is always good. If you have somebody like that, try and do that as frequently as you can because it's just good for you. But the way I see it, I'm either him and the things that I ought to do will just sort themselves out one way or the other, or I'm not him and the things that I ought to do aren't really the things that I need to do. So it's no real big law. It's no big loss either way. Speaking of big loss, can you believe that if Argentina bites the dust this week, is it this week? When's Argentina fighting England? England, Argentina, July 15th. That is Wednesday. On Wednesday, we are going to get Argentina versus England. And it's really funny that if Argentina loses, then the only teams left in this godforsaken World Cup are going to be Western European teams. So there's no... so in the first time that it's been held in in the Americas, in the kind of... you know, I hate this term normally, but I feel like it's a propos for the kind of gravitas that I'm trying to conjure here. In the kind of new world continent... Or actually, wait, that's not true because... wait, hang on. Where was FIFA hosted? List of FIFA World Cup hosts. Argentina and Uruguay thus boycotted the tournament. Oh, wait, no, hang on. No, okay, Brazil's been... okay, we've been in Brazil before. Uruguay... we've been in Uruguay before. What the... yeah, we've had a bunch... wait, it's... the earliest one, the host nation in 1930 was Uruguay. So wait, this is... wait, no, that's really embarrassing for the US then. Sucks to be you guys. It really rocks that half of that like 90% of my audience is American and I am just in Canada. It feels like I can throw, you know, I'm throwing rocks inside of a glass house, but the glass house is made of like plexiglass or like Pyrex or some shit. It's fairly sturdy. So these rocks are kind of feeling pretty light in my hands. God. It has been beautiful how the World Cup has kind of brought everybody together, though. I feel like for the first time in... like maybe ever, I've been able to keep up with some of the sports talk that my coworkers have been going through. I feel like usually for that stuff, I'm super lost. My coworkers aren't huge sports guys, is the thing. I'm not sure what all they seem to do is like go to the gym and maybe go to a restaurant every now and again. I think they're kind of private about their hobbies to some extent, and you know that's also on me for not really asking or for being curious. So that's... you know, they probably do have rich interior lives that I'm just simply not aware of because I don't engage with them too much. That being said, I would, if any one of them is a VTuber and we somehow end up meeting, it'll be really, really funny. Can you imagine if... God, that would actually be hilarious. Some real Death Note type shit would be happening would be going down if somebody else in my office ever turned out to be a VTuber. It's gonna be like that fucking Dexter show where it's just like two people who are just suspecting each other. It's gonna be Death Note for real. I don't know. I kind of like that just to feel a little bit of camaraderie with somebody else in the physical space. I feel like I would feel much better if I met other VTubers who were kind of local to the scene, which is kind of a difficult ask just because of the typically private nature of this method of streaming. Like, if I go like, hey, are there any VTubers in place, name, location, redacted? You know, that's kind of a risky move because one, I'm giving away my location, which isn't great. Two, I'm asking somebody else to give away their location, which is also not great. And three, even if they do end up being like, hey, let's go. Hey, I'm also a VTuber, location, name redacted. We should meet up. It's gonna be, I don't know, I feel like it'll be kind of messy. Never say never, though. I'm not gonna... I'm gonna keep an open mind if such things ever happen. I'm a fairly private person even outside of my VTubing activities, so it would be very difficult for them to track me down, I feel. Let's not jinx let's not push my luck, though. God. I don't know if I told you all this story. There is a convention out near where I live that I try to go to every year because, you know, it's a local convention and it has like it's an interesting event. I'm a weeb. I acknowledge that. I own it. So it's a good opportunity for me to kind of just be myself in this kind of zone, feel the mask slip off a little bit and enjoy being myself without like the pretensions of being in, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like letting the mask off has a lot of negative connotations these days. I'm saying it in a capacity that I don't have to pretend that I'm not a weeb. Anyway, I tried to get tickets for it this year because last week I was like, oh yeah, and the tickets for that convention should be up now. I should probably try and get some. I checked the website. They sold out of the weekend passes like within 14 hours of dropping the tickets. All I could get was a Friday pass. And it's gonna be this way for the foreseeable future, I think. So I'm gonna need to have like somebody on the inside, or I'm gonna need like somebody with an RSS feed to give, or some manner of newsletter to be like, hey, the sales are up. They have a Facebook page, but God knows I'm not using that. Mostly because I don't even think I can access my own Facebook anymore. I think if I reinstall the app on my phone, it'll log me back in because like, it has like some kind of cloud identity shit going on, but I'm not a fan of that. And also, I'm kind of worried that if I reactivate my Facebook, some person from my high school years who is still on Facebook will see that and be like, hey, it's been a while, let's catch up. Because I like the people that I met in high school, but I am not prepared for all that. I don't know. I had a pretty good high school experience, all things considered. There were a couple of rough spots, but other than that, I came away from it relatively unscathed. That being said, I'm not really interested in linking up with anybody that I knew from that time period. Okay, and they're gonna... The jaw is kind of gonna close in like this, and he's gonna have a sort of slightly broader face in the base model, I think. The scruff is still too small, which is crazy. But I think I can get away with it. Maybe I should make his head smaller. No, that seems cruel. Okay. I need to angle the hand just a tiny bit downward, I think. Yeah, this feels more correct. Let's flip the canvas real quick and see if that makes sense. Has the canvas been flipped this whole time? Wait, yeah. Whoops. Nice, okay. Oh yeah, in a heartwarming turn of events, I've actually started getting to get along with a guy from my office that I don't really like personally. I don't know. I think I've been able to set aside our differences. That, or he's just stopped annoying me as much as he used to. I really don't know what my beef with this guy is. I think he just reminds me too much of myself, and that makes me feel a little bit... That always gets me a little bit heated. I don't know if it's ever happened to anybody else. Have you ever met somebody who's almost exactly like you, but like a little bit not like you? You know what I mean? Like very like they have similar interests and like they have similar outlooks, personalities, methodologies, what have you. But they're not. But the way that they're like you is like weirdly annoying. And I often don't take this well because either it means that I'm annoying or it means that I find myself annoying. Neither of which are particularly good good things. I try not to think about it too much. Which is probably also not a good thing, but you know what? Can't win them all. Okay, so that's gonna go like... Okay, and yes, yes, yes. Can't always do the good thing. Sometimes you just gotta vibe it out. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Listen, I've already been able to overcome a lot of... Actually, I didn't have that many internal biases to begin with, so this is pretty much the only one that I have. No, that's not true. There's definitely a lot of internal biases that I should probably challenge, that are required to be challenged, or that I should look to challenge whenever possible. So this, I think I can give this one, let this one slide. Hey, how you doing, Michelle? How's your Sunday been? Okay. I'm glad to see that a lot more people are starting to install hair events into their characters. I've seen a lot of people saying that they miss them, and while I don't really miss them per se, I am glad that they're making a comeback. I think they're very charming, if a little difficult to draw sometimes. God, that whole little thing that I just said reminds me a lot of that one Tumblr post that's that's trying to be like, um, I don't. I don't remember what the exact wording was, but it kind of ended with, but everyone can work towards self-improvement. Remembers I'm trying to be more assertive. Like me! Been a big chillin' kind of Sunday. Been reading some manga and I'm really enamored with Ichi the Witch. Oh yeah. Now, I don't know. Ichi the Witch is so pleasant to read. Like, I don't know how to put it. It's not changing or anything, right? I haven't felt it like really move me like some other manga, but it is just extremely pleasant to read through. Everybody's very charming and witty. There's enough twists to kind of like keep you into it. It's not too formulaic. It's nice. I really like it a lot. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like the originating concept for Ichi the Witch could have been a big landmine, but the series itself treats it very well, I feel. Like the idea of like all witches before this have been female, but then there's this super special boy who's actually the first male witch. And it's like, okay, how are we gonna handle this? And then they handle it so fucking well. It rules. I'm glad to hear that you've been enjoying it. Let's see. Yeah, it could have easily been poorly handled, but I'm really gelling with how it's going down. It helps a lot that the world it's built in is very cohesive as well. Or at least it feels very fleshed out. I don't know how to put it. I feel like magic and sorcery is one of those genres that are defined by how compelling the world building is. Like, if you create a series based around like very kind of like fantasy magic, right? And the reader at some point goes like, "Man, this world sounds like it's so cool and interesting to live in." I think you've already done an exceedingly good job. Like it's about creating that sense of wonder in the reader about like the kind of interesting and hidden things inside of the world that you're being invited to. I feel like that's very important for me for any series that has like a strong focus on like sorcery and fantasy. Okay. I think a very easy way to do that is by introducing all kinds of funny gadgets. Like, I think in one of the earlier chapters, Ichi gets his hands on a pair of jumping boots that he uses for, I don't know what purpose, but things like that are very enchanting. I remember there was another series, I think it was literally called Flying Witch, where they also had things like this, where there were like magic gadgets or something, and it was really charming. I kind of miss that manga. I wonder if it's been going okay. I think it was a monthly release, so I don't imagine it's made much progress. It's also just not the kind of manga that has like development. It's very much a slice of life manga, which has magic and sorcery in it. Very enjoyable read, though. Oops. Ichi is also just delightful as a character. He's such a polite young man, but he's also insane. Any series that relies heavily on magic lives and dies by the greater world building. Even something like Mashal that focuses more on humor has interesting world building and magic mechanics. Exactly. You get it. God, Mashal was really fucking funny. I didn't end up reading it through the end because because it just kind of I kind of lost interest in it partway through. But I do remember that the first few chapters are really funny. Any series where the main character solves problems through like a comic application of either brute force or outside context capabilities is really funny. But like you said, it also ended up going. I think Mashal's strength, pun intended, perhaps, is that the magic world building was also really interesting. That being said, I do notice a trend, and this is kind of why I'm also happy the way that Ichi the Witch is handling its world building and power system. That in some cases, the author will establish this power system and kind of rules hierarchy, I guess would be the term. They establish a power system, and then the main character's power is just the power system doesn't apply to them, so they can just punch stuff. I always find that to be a little bit saddening. Like, for example, I remember watching Megalobox, right? Great series, which is an adaptation of the much older manga Tomorrow's Joe or Ashita no Joe. Great series. Its core conceit is that it is now the cyberpunk future that everybody's dreamed of, and cybernetically enhanced boxing is now extremely commonplace. And the story follows this one guy. I think his name is genuinely Joe. I don't remember. But the story follows this one guy who has like this very junky, scrappy pair of cybernetic boxing gear. And you know, he's really scrappy. He doesn't have a lot of money, but you're still excited to see how he kind of tries to climb the ranks with these limited resources and with, you know, this trainer who hasn't boxed in ages, but he wants to invest his time and effort into training Joe. And you're excited to see where this goes. And then by episode 2, it's like, yeah, no, we're too poor to afford a new set of mechanical arms for you. You're just going to have to box him with your normal human arms. And then he just boxes them with his normal human arms for the rest of the series. And I thought that was bullshit because I was in this for the cybernetic boxing. Having the thing of your character, you know, having like the core of your world building be like, here's this really interesting and compelling thing, and then having your main character be like, and here's the sole exception to that, who will be following for the entire story. It kind of rubs me the wrong way. Like, this guy better be really good at punching, or else I'm just not gonna be. I'm not. I'm just gonna stay through the whole series wishing that he was involved in the normal power system. It's a fine line to ride. Like, it's part of the reason I kind of struggle to get into something like Black Clover, because the main character's power in a world full of mages is just anti-magic. I don't know, it just doesn't sound very compelling to me. Yeah, I don't know. I think you can... Like you said, it is a very fine line to ride, because I think to some extent you can compensate for it through hype moments and aura. And I'm not using that as like a sort of meme phrase. I'm using that as a sort of technical term. Like, if you strip this guy's power away and are still expecting me to follow it, he better be fucking impressing me doing some insane 5 million IQ bullshit. Or else, again, it's just gonna be like, I'm gonna go throughout the whole series being like, man, I kind of wish this guy had those superpowers that everybody else has. This is kind of a nothing burger. Gonna need to put this eye a little bit further to the... like this, I think? Yes. But yeah. I don't know, I've never read that one book that's like that's called A Certain Scientific Railgun or something like that. Or A Certain Magical Index, because from what I understand, that thing's main conceit, that story's main conceit is also following around a guy whose magic is anti-magic. So but everybody glazed the hell out of that thing when it came out. I don't know, maybe it was still a relatively new concept back then and everybody was really into it. There we go. Rock Lee and Might Guy from Naruto are examples of it done well, partially because they're not main characters, but also, good God, they're good at throwing hands. That's what I'm saying! Yeah, you've got it! You've got it exactly. We are on the same page, because like I said, first of all, they're not the main characters, so we don't have to explore the world through their lenses, because otherwise it's, you know, we're missing out on what could be very interesting aspects of the world building. Like, you know, I've never read Naruto, but I imagine that there are all kinds of varieties in terms of like the ninja techniques they can use and whatnot, the jutsus. And there's a variety in the kind of trainings that they have to use to maintain those jutsus. But if it was just if Rock Lee was the protagonist, it would just be, I need to learn how to punch this guy harder. And while that can be interesting, and you can do a lot of variations on that one conceit, it's gonna get old at some point, and it's gonna, you know, you're gonna want to follow around some of the other characters. Yeah, I think you put it best that it is just a fine line to ride. Like, I think one of the best ways to do that is to have a variety of skill levels in the universe being represented in the story. Because you want your guy to be, you know, you want your guy the main character to be boxing, right? You want the main character to be like relatively strong. But you don't want them to be too strong, because otherwise what's the point of their development? But even that can be negotiated, because I was trying, you know, the other day when we were talking about Jagi in V's server, I was trying to read through some chapters of Fist of the North Star, because I thought I saw this one panel where Jagi was saying some shit like, traditions, who cares? As long as you win, anything goes, or something like that. And, you know, in almost 90% of the fights that Kenshiro gets into, he just beats the shit out of the other guy and leaves, right? Like, it's not even really a fight. But the way that it's made interesting is that you see the kind of morality that he demonstrates in the few chapters that I read, at least, right? Because, like, Jagi's not really much of an issue to take care of, but in the interim, you know, Kenshiro finds this kid who's been tied to a cinder block to wander the desert, and it's like, Jesus Christ, Jagi's really gotten more fucked up since I last met him. And, like, he runs into the younger sibling of, or older sibling of the kid who got sent to the desert, who shoots him with a crossbow bolt, and he asks them to do that shit because he understands that he wants to feel like the pain that the child has felt, and he's gonna transfer that over to Jagi, and that shit rocks. Like, you're not in this to see him get stronger as a martial artist. You're here because he has, like, a very noble heart. That's what makes it interesting. It's his approach to the kind of immorality and the kind of contrast he creates to the lawlessness of that wasteland. But yeah, no, I really like the example of Rock Lee because the most iconic Rock Lee match, the one that he fights against Skara, from what I understand, he didn't even win that fight. He still lost, but nobody gives a fuck because it was just that cool. And, you know, rightfully so. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. No, something's wrong with this eye. Let's flip the canvas and see what's going on here. God, I ate a sandwich earlier today that was very fulfilling. Every few months, I'll make myself this really nice sandwich, which involves stacking chicken strips, an omelet, and some microgreens in between two slices of bread, and it really hits. I love it. But I don't know how to put it. Whenever I eat microgreens, this is the surest sign that I need to get more fresh vegetables into my diet. Because whenever I eat microgreens, I feel like Popeye. Legit, I feel like I could start flexing and my sleeves will pop off and explode into confetti. Lee lost big time. He was essentially crippled after that fight. The cherry on the cake, though, is his fighting spirit was so strong that even while unconscious, he got back up on a shattered leg and got into his fighting stance. Real tearjerker moment. Fucking awesome. You see what I mean? Like, yeah, yeah. Fucking awesome. It doesn't matter that he lost because he was that guy. It doesn't matter that he got, you know, permanently shafted to secondary character status for the rest of the story because for that one moment in time, he was that guy. Maybe like this? Yeah, okay. Maybe a little longer, too. There we go. I need to make the face a little bit wider to accommodate, but that's fine. Jeez, that's a really tough. Those are tough shakes though, because like that, you know, were they like 13 when that happened? Like in that story, were they like 14, 13 or so? Aura farming does have its consequences, is the thing. Like the thought that you're like 13 years old and you're fighting for your life, trying to prove a point essentially, and it kind of costs you for the rest of your life is really sad to think about. Naruto has a stories about two things. One, how cool Sasuke is, and two, that it's really, I don't know. Does Naruto as a series like explore the kind of consequences and implications that 90% of the main characters are like child soldiers? Is that did we kind of gloss over that, or is that like an active part of the discussion? I have to read Naruto at some point just so I can understand the brain chemistry of the works that it influenced. Like I'm telling you, I read Berserk during the pandemic, or actually I think I started reading it shortly after Miura died, and after that I felt like it was similar to the experience that I had after playing Doom for the first time, where I felt suddenly much more literate in the genre. Yeah, Lee was like 13 or 14, and Gara was 12 or 13. Jesus! And yeah, that is discussed. Believe it or not, before the Leaf Village was founded, the Child Problem Soldier was worse. Fascinating. I guess it makes sense though, because you know it's sort of like the idea of like of how when like you know, typically when you provide resources to more officially recognized disenfranchised groups, you know, in this case child soldiers, but in real life cases things like drug addiction, it, you know, typically it gets better when, or at least it has positive impacts when it's more kind of organized and has like proper organizations and support groups for it. So I could believe that the child soldier problem was worse before the Leaf Village was introduced. Jesus Christ. I think I made his arm a little bit too thick. I need to take... First time in a long time that I've said I need to take some meat off this guy's bones. Also, I might just rearrange the hand a little bit here, just so that it kind of connects to the wrist a little bit more smoothly. Might have to bring in these ruffles a little bit. Like Kakashi, my favorite character, went through seeing both of his best friends die via war before even reaching teen status? Sheesh. Poor guy. Yeah, no, that is significantly worse. Okay. Okay, so we have this one here. There should be a second one somewhere around here, I think. Okay, I think we're good to move on to Lionheart. He really meant it when Sasuke said, "What if I killed everyone you loved and cared about?" And Kakashi replied, "Everyone like that's already dead." Jesus, man. Insane response, but honestly, he kind of got his ass. Jesus. Let's see. I wanted to. Okay, this is an idle thought that just kind of occurred to me, and I don't know how much sauce this is. So I'm glad that we do have that you're here, Michelle, because you might have more Naruto knowledge than I do. To what extent? Because from what I understand of Sasuke, his whole thing is that he has a lot of deep-seated suffering, which, you know, fares. But also, like, he kind of suffers from this whole thing of he struggles to want to be helped, or like he struggles to ask for help. And I'm kind of wondering the degree to which that can parallel the rabbit from Digital Circus Jax. I think from what I understand, she has very similar problems in terms of like accepting help. I've been thinking about her arc a lot recently. It's a very compelling and juicy idea, because like, how do you help somebody who kind of doesn't want to be helped, or who, you know, treats everybody who tries to help them very venomously? And it's like, you do still have to try. It's gonna suck, but you do in fact have to try. It's something that I think about a lot, because loneliness is a very real problem. And the most difficult part about it is that it's very difficult to escape that cycle, I think. Because, you know, once you are lonely, once you become a lonely person, it starts to kind of radiate from you, and it becomes very difficult to shake it off. That's the craziest comparison, but it's not like that far off. Sasuke will do anything for power, but he definitely struggles to get like actual mental help. I see. So okay, there is something there, but it's not particular. But it's not. It doesn't seem to be the same sort of vibe. Which, good to know. That is good to know. The idea of a ninja therapist is really funny. Apropos of this conversation, when you said mental help, I don't know. I was like, there's no logical reason that the therapist also needs to be a ninja, but I think like it would help. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I feel like if I was a ninja and I wanted to get mental help, I feel like if my therapist was also a ninja or was familiar with the job description that comes with being a ninja, they would be more easily able to understand and relate to my problems, at least to whatever framework they use for psychotherapy in the Naruto universe, which might be none, from what I understand. I hate Sasuke, but he is a pretty well-written character. Like, he's off his rocker, but his actions and reactions do at least make sense in relation to his grief and trauma. I always find those to be extremely juicy characters to think about. Not because they kind of haunt you in a strange way. Like, you're very much like, this person was an entire dickhead, and I know that all that shit happened to them, but they still piss me off. But it kind of like haunts you a little bit, right? Or at least that's how it is for me. Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a despicable thing to let somebody who you're not particularly fond of live rent free in your head. But let's be honest, that sometimes they kind of just muscle in on that real estate. They're not living in your head rent free. They're just kind of squatting in there. Which, you know, from a certain point of view is the same thing, but I don't know. Is that the implication behind that phrase, living in your head rent free? Is that the character or person in question is like squatting? I never thought of it like that. Is the phrase living in your head rent free pro landlord? Maybe I should reconsider this. No, but on the other hand, okay, is it pro landlord because they're able to be housed rent free, or is it anti landlord? Wait, no. No, I've got that backwards. This is a stupid line of thought. Let's not pursue it much further. Okay. I love having a detailed sketch because I can make these thick, meaty lines once I'm actually in the inking phase. I don't know, I kind of miss doing these. I feel like I struggle to control the line width if I go straight in for thick lines. But I think that when I have a more detailed sketch like this, it's much easier to go back and vary the line weight once I'm done with the outline. Okay, Michelle, strange question. What is your favorite fun fact about the Naruto universe? It doesn't have to be anything super deep or anything, but just like your favorite bit of trivia, something that you occasionally think about that you don't see a lot of people mention. Or even if you do see people mentioning it. Go ahead and tell me about it. Okay, then over here, we're gonna just bend that this way. Oh man, I wish I would. Maybe I should have gone in for more detail on this ruffle. Nah, it's probably fine. Then gonna add this here. And then there we go. Okay. And then another one here. That's a good question, but off the top of my head, it would have to be the idea of a run-on-site order, which is a term people have used for a few characters where they're deemed so dangerous, you should not engage with them at all. But canonically, only one character was given that label. Minato the Yellow Flash Namikaze. Was that the... was that Naruto's dad? I feel like I've heard that nickname before. Run on site is fucking hilarious. I feel like that's some shit that the Baki author would make up to glaze Yujiro Hanma. But also fair, because there are some scary-ass dudes in the Naruto universe. Like, there's no shame, because, like, if I feel like it's almost a very sensible tactical decision, because then if you recognize that if you recognize tactically that one dude who appears is just gonna kill everybody at the scene, it's a good idea to have standing orders that if you see this guy, you need to start booking it. If you see this guy, you are not him. You are not that guy. You do not engage with this guy. Just don't. Leave. Hit the bricks. It's over. Yes, sir, that's Naruto's dad, the fastest ninja practically ever. Able to hold off, if I recall, a platoon of either 100 or 1,000 ninjas by himself. This dude's moving like the Kanson de Gist. Jesus. 1,000 guys? In a row? Oh, hello, Purple Radio Man Senior. AI viewers on streamboo.com, don't mind if I don't. There we go. 1,000... 1,000 ninjas in a row? Sorry. I don't know. Whenever... I don't know why. When you said that, that one phrase was like 30 dicks, 30 dicks. My girlfriend sucked 30 dicks in a row, all at once. Fantastic. What a beast. That makes sense why you'd put a run-on side order for that guy. Yeah, that feels like a sensible move. Just go. Just leave. It's not worth it. You really hit the nail on the head for what makes Kenshiro so interesting. The question isn't ever, how is he gonna win, except in two situations that work so well to subvert that expectation, but how he interacts with the world around him. Like he has every reason to lash out against this world that took everything away from him and has the power and technique to rule with strength, but instead he chooses love and kindness, which fuels his righteous fury, which is why he's the GOAT. Fabulous. Yeah. I think that's a very interesting and somewhat, even sometimes somewhat difficult way of making a character more interesting, is giving them a very specific philosophy and having them follow it to the letter. Like let's say you have a character who's like the weak should fear the strong, and he himself gets put in a situation where somebody strong is overruling him. And he's like, all right, well, shit, I guess this guy's my manager now. That's not only funny, but it shows a very sort of fat and interesting internal consistency. Or, if there's a fun kind of dialogue on what exactly strength is. And, that's especially helpful in these kinds of mangas where the main character is like this invincible badass. And like you said, I should read more Fist. What I'm hearing is that I should read more Fist of the North Star. I think I would enjoy that a lot, and I do think that's going to be one of those works, sort of like Naruto, where once I read it, I'll start seeing its DNA everywhere, which is always a good time. I don't know. I love stories. I love stories and writing, exploring themes, ideas, variations on themes. It's all so good. In the same way, every manga after Dragon Ball has Dragon Ball DNA, every manga after Fist of the North has its DNA, including Dragon Ball and Berserk. Awesome. Yeah. There was this one diagram, right, that showed like the Flapjack family tree of cartoons, where it showed that like 90% of the people who worked on a cartoon called Flapjack eventually ended up making their own Cartoon Network series. And in some regards, you can kind of see the way that the DNA of that original series influenced other ones. And I feel like that's also the case for manga. Because a lot of the manga who do become super successful very frequently started out as assistants for already super successful mangaka. Or super successful authors. I don't know. It's been fascinating to me, and I've recently become somewhat interested in this as a methodology and in methods to enable this as a process. That people often say that if you want to replicate the styles or ideals, aesthetics of something at the time, you shouldn't look at like the most obvious or traditional example of it. You should look at what inspired that story and then try to kind of match its DNA mixture. The whole Black Swordsman arc in Berserk was Miura channeling Kenshiro with the idea of establishing Guts' main ability set, fighting style, and ethos. Ah. That makes sense because that the Black Swordsman arc is like the first few kind of storylines of Berserk, right? Like that, like it's the one where he's just kind of met Puck and they're only just starting out their journey. Because yeah, actually, I don't know how to put it. Like Berserk would feel like a much different story if it opened with a Golden Age chapter. Or if it opened up in like the Golden Age saga. Like, I feel like the first few chapters are helpful for kind of understanding what the world of Berserk is and establishing, I don't know. It's an interesting question because like I feel like the revelation that magical elements and sorcery and demons and bullshit are real would be far more shocking if we had started out in the Golden Age arc, but at the same time I think it's also more interesting to have started out in with this like little sampler platter of Guts going after apostles and bullshit and such, because it sort of establishes, I don't know how to put it, like it establishes more of the world and it establishes a sort of creeping dread that you feel throughout the entire Golden Age saga, which is okay. Things seem to be going pretty well. How exactly did it end with Guts being who he is today? Because he's the struggler, right? He's not there. This guy has not had a single good day in maybe his whole life. But at the same time, things look like they're not too bad right now. So what's happening? The Golden Age is peak, but the context that the Black Swordsman arc gives the sense of dread. Yeah, you got it exactly. Yeah. Okay. I think it's good to establish stories which are like which open in media res with that sort of thing. Like recently, I saw a film called Farewell, My Concubine. Really good movie. Shout outs to Jupiter for hosting a watch along for it. And really great movie. It is a historical epic about a pair of opera actors throughout the Cultural Revolution of China. And it opens with them at a stage like much, much later, after pretty much all the dust has settled from the Cultural Revolution. And the whole time, it has this very strong sense of melancholy. And I think that's really effective at establishing that these two have been through a lot. You don't know how much or the exact nature of it exactly, but these two have been through a lot. And then you get through the details of like what exactly they've been through, and it's so much worse. I'm gonna add a little bit more fabric over on this side because right now it's a little bit scandalous. I think we would see a little bit of nipple here. Hang on. Rotate. Maybe this way. Yep. But you know, it's also really nice because it establishes that Guts is like maybe the coolest guy ever. Because I remember very vividly that one of the opening fights has him essentially use his big ass sword to clear out an entire bar full of bad guys in like maybe 15 seconds. I remember that there was like a table flipping action or something. Very cool, very interesting. You do have to enjoy moments like this where it just shows that, oh yeah, for all of the difficulties in this guy's life, he is very extremely capable of kicking ass. Okay, and then over here. When he uses a Dragon Slayer to cut a dude in half like it was hot knife through butter, it genuinely stuck with me for years. Yeah. I think it's not often, like, we talk about, like, how, I don't know, I think it's because we're so used to seeing insane feats of strength in the context of things like Dragon Ball, for instance, where, you know, people can use Planet Buster moves fairly easily. Like, I think a lot of the time it makes us, it kind of helps, it kind of makes the reality of how insane some of these actions are kind of escape you. And I think Berserk is really good at that because very frequently it'll ground you by saying like, "Hey, that was a fucked up feat of strength. This guy is like not human. This guy is odd and some kind of mutant." Like a lot of the way that the action is depicted makes it very clear that the way that this guy is holding a sword should not be practical or possible, and the sheer weight that it drives around is extremely destructive. Massive, thick, heavy, and far too rough. It's more like a slab of raw iron than a sword. The Dragon Slayer is 6 feet long and at least 400 pounds. It's insane. It's so fucking scary. Guts is the scariest guy I've ever met in my entire life. Much like myself. Hey, yo! Hey, Ryan. Good to see you, buddy. How you doing? Doing alright? Yeah, that's good. Oh yeah, quick update. I talked to Zed about that idea we had for the thing. They seem pretty happy to be into it. I'm going to do the lines if that's okay. Unless do you want to do the lines and I'll do the colors? I'm not too far along on it, so it's fine if you want to swap. But yeah, how's your Sunday night been going? No, I said you could do the lines. It's all good. Cool. I'll work on those and send them over once they're ready. Thanks, man. God. It's gonna be really interesting. In October, I'm going to go visit in September, late September, I'm going to go visit my family for the first time this year. And it's gonna be really interesting because I kind of want to use their bathroom scale to check my weight. Because I'm finally at a point in my life where no matter what the number is, whether it's higher or lower than I remember it being, I'm just gonna be like, hell yeah. I don't know. I kind of want to know how much I weigh in terms of sheer numbers because I feel like that could be a big ego boost to me right now. Got home from work a couple hours ago, but I'm just about to work on some stuff that I gotta finish this month before I get cracking on Art Fight. Nice! Hope it goes smoothly. Thank you for your hard work today. Okay. Stream will be good for me. I need a co-working mood to get me going. Hell yeah. You know, I'm also working on an Art Fight thing. Wait, what the... Oh, I'm rotated, huh? Well, that's okay. Nice, alright. Okay, I think this line in particular needs a little bit more work. But yeah, I was just talking with Michelle about how Berserk is really cool because it shows you that Guts is an absolute mutant, sort of right off the bat. And it just continues establishing that throughout the entire series. I still think about, to this day, that part in the fight against that one dude in the port, where Guts was riding on one of the apostles. I don't remember his name, the big beast dude, and he cuts a tornado in half while flying through the air. I remember like my jaw being dropped throughout that entire scene. It was the most hardcore shit ever. I do think that I feel like the way that Berserk works is that it'll subject you through to bizarre depictions of intense human suffering, and very occasionally it'll put down the stick and reward you with a delicious carrot of some shit that should be airbrushed on a van. Him writing on Nosferatu Zod, that's his name, Zod. Yeah, that was so peak. Yeah, no, I feel like the reward for reading Berserk and being able to, and you know, and being able to maturely approach the difficulties and situations that these people are subjected to, is that every once in a while you will see the most gorgeous, intense, badass paneling of your entire goddamn life. 2-page spread of some genuinely life-changingly awesome shit. I don't know. There's still a lot about Berserk. I think the best stories, the ones that I can objectively... It's very difficult for me to say that anything is, like, life-changing as I kind of experience it, because the way that I typically define that life-changing, or at least very important, or whether I think something is good as a story, is how often I think about it, either endearingly or negatively, or, you know, any way at all, really. Long after I finished it. Like Disco Elysium, I still think about some lines from Disco Elysium to this day. So that's how I know that shit is awesome. And like for Berserk, I also think about some things of it to this day. Not just the interesting things, but also like I remember during that arc where they were fighting that intensely square priest guy. I don't remember his name either. He was really scary looking though. Like he literally had like a cube for a head. But yeah, during that, I remember that there was, at the end of the arc, there was a couple that essentially formed of a guy who abandoned the woman. It was a man and a woman. The guy abandoned the woman during like an intensely frightening supernatural episode. And the woman, I think, also sold out the guy at some point. Like, they had very much betrayed each other, but they decided to stick together. And I thought that was extremely... Heartwarming isn't the right word, but very poignant. I don't know, like, both of them had done each other dirty, and both of them had done wrong to each other, but at the same time, they did at least still have each other at the end of everything. And I thought that was extremely poignant. I might need to add another ruffle here. I think this part here is a little bit strange looking. One of my favorite smaller details is both times Serpico tries to challenge Guts, he chose specific terrain to give Guts a disadvantage, mainly by making the Dragon Slayer their worst weapon for their current battleground, be it a cliffside or a room full of pillars. Serpico is so fun because he's just like, he is such a clever little tactical dude. I think like during the time that they visit the... I think that he does get, like, wind sorcery, and that helps him out at some point, but his main strength is that he's just genuinely tactically gifted. And it's very refreshing to see, because you either have, like, dudes who have intense, almost supernatural sword skill like Griffith, or dudes who have insane brute strength like Guts, or a combination of both, which is also Guts. So it's very interesting to see how, like, just a regular guy with regular guy parameters can also keep up with that. And the answer is he fights very cleverly. Let's see. I also really like the side character that's this dude who is supposed to be from Berserk's equivalent to India. And he just has very... all these traditional Indian martial arts weapons. Like, you know, he's got chakrams, he's got... He's got, like, the whip swords and everything. He's got the whole shebang. Unfortunately, he does kind of suck compared to, like, everybody else. It also leads to another raw panel where Guts catches Serpico's sword with his flesh hand and breaks it with his metal hand. Fucking awesome. I forgot about that. Catching it with your bare hand and then breaking it with your metal hand. I guess it makes more sense if you're going for breaking the sword with the hand that's like more materially suited for it, but still catching a sword with your flesh and blood hand takes some real cojones. Guts fights appropriately enough like a guy who's lost everything. Guts has guts to a detriment. It's so good. Yeah. I remember recently I saw a discussion about Hunter x Hunter where it pointed out that Gon's whole approach to fights is extremely childlike in that he assumes he'll just be able to tank most of everything. And I think Guts is in a very similar position where I guess he kind of sees the trade-off. Like, I think this happened. The most clear signs of this was when he hacked off his hand during the eclipse, and just to be able to, because he realized that he wasn't going to be able to save the arm. Right? He was like, okay, shit, tactical decision making time, and he chopped off his own fucking hand. I don't know. It is a recurring thing that he fights in a very self-destructive way. Which, in a series like Berserk makes you very nervous. Like, I know we've already got the black armor, which is already kind of a big detriment to his mental health. But I'm kind of scared knowing that it could get worse. Like, I know for a fact that there are crueler fates in store for my guy. Okay. Perfect. I'm gonna drink some water. No, I do think that in order for your manga shonen protagonist to really reach capital H him status, they do need to be a little bit willing to destroy themselves. Because I remember really liking I kept up with My Hero Academia for a couple of years. I think I kind of dropped off a little bit after the arc where they went camping. And yeah, I think I dropped off a little bit after that. But the thing that stuck to me the most was just how balls to the wall, self-destructive Midoriya's fighting style is. Because that kid would break every finger in his hand to get a better shot at you. Or to at least have a prayer of getting a shot at you. And the only reason he stopped is because everybody told him, if you keep doing this, you're just not going to have hands anymore. And he was like, well, shit, I better think of something. And like, this happens with Luffy, too. This happens with pretty much everybody. Every go to the shonen protagonist that I can think of has a moment where they get run through with a sword or a spear or whatever the hell, and they just like start walking towards whoever stabbed them because like now they're in range. Yeah, that's the funniest part. He really went, okay, can't use hands anymore. What else do I have? And then he suddenly looks down and you can hear the light bulb go off in his head. Actually, it took him, from what I remember, it took him a lot to remember that light bulb, for that light bulb to go off. He had to be terrorized by a senior citizen for 2 weeks before he came up with that. God. I feel like a lot of things make me appreciate the effort and creativity that has to go into Sanji's fighting style, because making a guy look cool only using kicks is actually kind of a big ask. Pretty much exclusively because it requires you to show the full body, or it requires you to very subtly or gracefully include the legs in specific shots. Because the thing is, boxing is really good because you can just have the character be waist up and you get like 90% of the action on panel. Kicking is much more complicated. Yeah. Not to mention the mechanics of kicking is a lot more involved. It's difficult because it's also harder to make it more believable in terms of the logistics of it, like you said, because punching, right? Punching and fist techniques have a lot of short-range moves that are very adaptable and flexible, right? Like if you're like at super close range, you can go for a palm strike. If you're at medium range, you know, it's like that's when you can go into the jab and outboxing. And at longer range, you just start to move towards them. When you're kicking, there's no real short-range solution. And that sucks because a lot of what is the hypest, a lot of what is the most interesting looking, is these like super short-range slugfests. For kicking, you almost it's almost like you're more showing like a fencing match, I feel. And this is something that I've had to think about a lot because I have a guy who is very much a kicking guy. That's also the difficult part about kicking, is that there's no elegant term for a guy who almost exclusively uses his legs. The closest one that I found is tireur from Savat, which is a highly kick-focused martial art from France that actually had a little bit of... Its high kicks and more acrobatic moves actually had a little bit of influence on Taekwondo and Karate, which is really interesting as a cultural exchange thing. But yeah, tireur means something like shooter. Does kickboxer not work as a term? Well, what's the second half of that word, Ryan? I feel like kickboxer implies more like you are boxing and you're kicking. Sorry, the first response was a little bit aggressive. Kickboxer feels like it's a combination of both kicking and boxing, right? It's a compound term, so it's very hard to divorce one from the other. It's technically correct because you don't need to box in order to be a kickboxer, technically. But, you know, if you say boxer, right, that very immediately conjures the idea of a guy who only uses his fists. If you say kickboxer, I feel like the first idea that comes to mind is a guy who both kicks and punches. Yeah, sorry I jumped down your throat there. That was my bad. No, because kickboxing is both kicking and boxing. Although I do appreciate the beauty of your mind for conjuring a world where kickboxing is restricted exclusively to kicking. And that's the thing too, that even most Taekwondo, which is very famously kick-oriented, also has fist moves. It also has fist-based techniques, as does Savat, because fists are just that reliable. They're very adaptable. They're very flexible. They are good for a lot of different situations. Interestingly enough, Savat actually has a few slap-like techniques because of the fact that I think during the time that it was being sort of birthed in the back alleys and shipyards of France, attacking somebody with a closed fist was considered using a lethal weapon. So because of that, very often they had to attack and fight using open palms, which resulted in a lot of slapping. It's funny that most boxing defenses just absolutely crumble when anything outside of punches are used. Like if you do peekaboo stance or a Philly shell in kickboxing, you're gonna get rocked hard. Yep. These boxers ain't ever gonna see a nutshot coming. Possibly literally, because those gloves take up a lot of your vision. Yeah, like Michelle said, like if you try to do like a peekaboo stance, actually no, with a peekaboo stance you'd probably still see a nutshot coming, but like, yeah, you might if you do like a Philly shell, yeah, or like a hitman stance for example. So Philly shell, I don't remember too much of Philly shell. What did that look like again? Okay, so hang on, I want to show you the search results for this because the first result for Philly shell in my search was this profoundly delightful profile picture. Shout out to this guy. But okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, for this one, so in a Philly shell, you would actually struggle to see a nut shot coming a little bit, depending on the proximity. Okay, so Hitman stance. Not exactly what I had in mind. Hitman. Oh, hey. Hey, man, you're exactly who I was thinking about when I was talking about this. Hitman boxing stance. Generally, though, you leave your entire lower body exposed to things like calf kicks and thigh kicks. Yeah, and that's... Yeah, okay. So the Hitman stance is actually much more open. You'd be able to see the nutshot coming with Hitman. Yeah, no. The thing is that... Listen... Calf kicks, thigh kicks, and low kicks in general are very much like the most boring and also most effective answer. From what I've seen, like if you can kick low and do it consistently, the other guy is cooked. Because if you do enough damage to the legs, the other guy is pretty fucked. Like the legs are like what drives 90% of the rest of the body. So unless they also have some experience with grappling, or if it's like MMA where grappling is also involved. Yeah. Oh god, a knee stomp. Is that what I think it is? So hang on, I feel like I've heard of that before. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was. Ooh, that looks nasty. Yeah, no, that's fuck your leg forever kind of moves. That's... Oh, yeah. That's really rough to think about. Is this guy Ecuadorian? Hang on, pause. Is it... Okay. So the shorts here, this guy's either Colombian or Ecuadorian. I don't know who that is, though. I feel like I should get more into kickboxing or boxing. I feel like I would really enjoy keeping up with that. Boxers have the best hands by far, but it's so specific that anyone with even average kicks or graps will get the easy dub. Back to the naming technique, you might just have to come up with your own catch-all term for kick-only styles that your universe uses. Fleetfoot comes to mind if you want to use that. That's also an option. Yeah. I think this might also just be a case of the guy not really naming himself, or just like calling yourself a martial artist. I don't know. There's lots of options and all of them are equally juicy. The thing is that the guy in question, his style is very much an outlier, and it's frequently acknowledged that him using almost exclusively kicks is both weirdly detrimental and shouldn't work as well as it does. All these kicking only weirdos, we call them feed freaks. God, really? God, that would be such a devastating word, actually. God, yeah. Really funny to it's just really funny to think of like somebody just calling the character in question, it's that foot fetishist again, and literally everybody whipping their heads around to be like, what? My favorite feet freak, Sanji. Also, learning the origins works to inform the style. Like, if I recall correctly, Taekwondo's high-flying kicks were originally developed to fight against horseback cavalry. That would make a lot of sense, because that's also what Korea's premier sword fighting style Hedong-gundo was about as well. Like it, Hedong-gundo is, or I don't remember if it's Hedong-gundo or Hedong-kumdo. I think it's kumdo because kum is sword. Thanks, shout out to Amelia Watson for that one clip for informing me of that. I should know more Korean. I don't know nearly enough Korean for the life that I've led. But yeah, no, that was a lot of the case for Korean martial arts. And I don't know, actually, I was gonna say, I feel like the nastiest and most brutal fighting styles often come from countries that were either briefly or to this day suffer from colonialism, because in a lot of these cases the main goal was to be able to fight back with very few resources, which is why things like Pencak Silat in, I believe, Indonesia, or was it Malaysia? Let me double check that. This information could be useful for Uma Musume fanfics. Maybe we don't want to explore. Okay, so yes, definitely, but also please be extremely careful when discussing a Japanese property in a Korean setting. I was gonna Google something and I forgot. Oh well. Well, I can do that later. The Mongolians really instilled so much fear in southern neighbors with their horses. Oh my god, for real. My fault? No, you're good, you're good, you're good. I'm just saying that, it's a fascinating idea. You would have to be real careful. You would have to be real careful. Just wanted horse girls to do Taekwondo flying kicks. That would be very sick. No, the thing is that is a beautiful idea. I do love it. God, there has to be at least one one long-term fan fiction in the Uma Musume community that explores the idea of Uma Musume fighting rings, right? Or like what happens when an Uma Musume decides to go into martial arts? Because I think in the game you do actually get a couple of events where you go to like a wrestling show that has Uma Musume participants. Okay, so maybe I can add a couple. No. Actually, this one should be a little bit farther out, if anything. Goldship was built for the ring, not for the racetrack. That's true. She is a being of rather pure violence. It's really interesting how... So, okay, it's really interesting how for a lot of like the more viral horse girls like Tachyon, for example, or Super Creek, for example, you know, with the whole Goo Goo Babies thing, there are threads and discussions of the fact that, you know, there are definitely more than these, than like the more viral memes, like, you know, beneath the sort of whole Goo Goo Babies thing, which is very much real. You know, Super Creek is just an extremely kind woman who wants to help others and wants to take care of others, and you know, she has a very understanding and helpful heart. Goldship is the only one of these characters that I've never seen that happen for, which leads me to believe that she is just a violent thug who happens to be cracked at racing. They would rule so hard because aren't they heavier than normal humans on top of being more athletic? I don't know, actually. That's very difficult to judge because when the game lists the weights for the different characters, almost all of them are some joke to avoid saying an actual number. I guess because, you know, because of like the typical joke, like, ah ha ha, they're sensitive about their weight, which, you know, coward. I don't particularly enjoy, but it is what it is. I don't know. Maybe they are heavier than typical humans. I would have to consult my buddy Preston on that. He would know for sure. Actually, let me message him now. He might be online. Hey, quick question. Are Uma Musume typically heavier than a human being? I feel like they would be. So the thing is that very frequently throughout the stories, it's expressed that these women are much physically stronger than even like the weakest. Like they are far beyond baseline human in terms of sheer strength and power. So that leads me to the belief that they logically would be heavier because they just do have more muscle. If they had the weight of the horse they're based on, those kicks would be disgustingly devastating. No, yeah, that's very few people talk about that, but being fat and heavy makes you extremely good at fighting. Like being heavy is ideal. Like that's why all the heaviest hitters are in the heavyweights, is that they're just that big and they know how to use that mass effectively. Just like Butterbean. Was Butterbean that one guy who was like... Hang on. Was it Butterbean that one guy who just went in and... American television personality and professional boxer. Super heavyweight divisions. Overall 4-time world champion across the 4 sports. Jesus. Ash's combined record is 97-24-5 with 65 knockouts and 9 submissions? What the fuck? Fucking this dude rules. 97 wins? What a demon. Ash had a difficult childhood. His mother died when he was 8 and he was frequently bullied at school for being overweight. Okay. That's sad but not atypical. Okay. Ash began his fighting career on the Tough Man contest scene in Texarkana, Arkansas in the early 1990s and went on to become a 5-time World Tough Man heavyweight champion with a record of 56-5 with 36 knockouts. What a disgusting record. This guy's a demon. He received the nickname Butterbean when he was forced to go on a diet consisting mostly of chicken and butter beans in order to meet the Tough Man 400-pound weight limit under the new age trainer Prose Buell, the Better Buell. He made his professional boxing debut on October 19, 1994, beating Tim Daniels by decision in Birmingham, Alabama. He soon developed a cult following and became known as King of the Four Rounders. Speaking of his popularity in a 2008 interview with Boxing Insider, Ash stated, "It took off pretty quick. My second pro fight was on national TV. It don't happen like that. Normally you get 15-20 fights and then you get a TV fight unless you're very fortunate. Tyson, his second pro fight wasn't on TV. He probably had 5 or 6, 7 fights before he got to be on TV. Me, my second pro fight was televised. It was at Jed Harron's undercard. Then a couple more fights and I'm on TV again, and every fight since then was televised. It just don't happen like that. I've probably had more televised fights than any world champion out there." He fought Johnny Knoxville and hit him so hard Johnny got concussed, and while unconscious he tried to swallow his own tongue, leading to the funniest line in Jackass, "Is Butterbean okay?" Wait, okay. He fought Johnny Knoxville and hit him so hard Johnny got concussed, and while unconscious he tried to... Okay. Wait, I see why that's funny. So Johnny was half unconscious, about to swallow his own tongue and asphyxiate, and he asked if Butterbean was okay. What? That's really funny. Oh my god. Ash's 5-year streak was brought to an end with a majority decision defeat by heavyweight Billy Zumbrum in August 2001. The following year, he fought his first 10-rounder against 52-year-old former world heavyweight champion Larry Holmes. While Holmes won a unanimous decision, Ash was credited with a controversial knockdown in the final round, which was later shown in filmed replays as not being a knockdown, no punch having landed, and it was a slip. Holmes only reeled against the ropes. Okay, how much of a demon was Larry Holmes then? Because if he... Okay, so Billy Ash, right? Years active 1994 to 2013. He was born 1966. By 2000 and when was this? 2002. Okay, 66. Okay, no, he would have also been in his approaching his 40s or like mid 30s. That's not too bad. Still, 52 years old against like a guy that's like 20 years younger than him is pretty good. God, I love learning about anomalous sports freaks because like there was also this one guy in baseball I think called the Rube who was by all accounts a he had some kind of mental illness without a question. He was also like the best pitcher ever. Like like his name became a shorthand. His name Rube became a shorthand for a guy who's kind of stupid, which not very cool. But at the same time, he was also like one of the most prolifically successful pitchers in existence. To be fair, that might be in part because he wasn't like super into drinking or smoking as was the fashion at the time. Because like baseball is such a fucked up sport because 90% of its most famous professionals, its historical champions, were on some combination of cigarettes and alcohol for food 9 days out of the week. Baseball is such an insane sport. I still think sometimes about the 10-cent beer night. Okay. One of my favorites is Bo Jackson, a football player and baseball player who dominated in both sports. He was once able to break a bat over his head like a toothpick. That's scary. That's really scary. He sounds cool. God, that reminds me of when people flip out during. I feel like sports ball sports, right? Like physical team competitive sports are really good for like when you want to show that you're upset about something because like you watch like a fighting game tournament or something and a guy gets upset and he tosses a controller, he knocks over a chair or something. It's an expression of rage, but it's a little bit lacking in aura. Meanwhile, this guy was cracking baseball bats over his head to express his disgust. His career only ended because during a football game he got tackled, but his own freakish strength and momentum caused a career-ending injury, a thigh tear. Jeez, that sounds nasty. Poor guy. Yeah, no, that's the thing that nobody ever tells you about, like, being super strong, is that past a certain point, you can become so strong it, like, genuinely starts injuring you. or injury becomes much more likely because you can like tank a tackle for sure, but like should you tank a tackle? And the answer is typically no, you shouldn't. Do you know what he got up to after his career ended? Like, did he become like a TV personality or something? Hmm. I need to check the rough here. No, okay, it does go all the way up here. One baseball highlight I remember is him catching a ball that was basically already a homer under, but he ran up a barricade to catch it while it's still alive. Also, yeah, I think he did do some TV stuff afterwards. Sheesh. Wait, so this should have been a home run. He was like, nah, fuck that, and it still caught up to the ball while it was still in motion? That's awesome. You know, consistently what I'm learning is that is that aura does have consequences. Grievous, terrible consequences sometimes. God, I used to listen to this podcast called The Dollop, which maintain was still endlessly amusing, if only for the sheer fact that these two it was run by these two very edgy comedians, right? And they started out as edgy comedians, and they still retained some of that edge throughout the podcast's lifetime. I don't keep up with the podcast anymore; it's probably still going. But what was endlessly amusing to me was that they explored so many. The thrust of each episode was that they would explore a little incident in American history. He also had a game for the NES, Bo Jackson's Baseball, fun game with a surprisingly good OST. That's nice. But yeah. Oh, that's actually really sweet. I don't know. I feel like more celebrities should start endorsing video games again, or like attaching their names to video game properties. I think it's the only way we can start to combat the constant influx of... Or, I don't know, I feel like we almost need to start doing it just to have something for the youth to play that isn't Fortnite or Roblox. Because that shit's gonna have some consequences. Probably already has had some consequences, but, you know, we'll get to that. Oh yeah, I was talking about that podcast. So these two guys were like fairly edgy right. I don't want to call them right wing because I don't know their exact politics, but when they started out, they felt very much like the kind of like edgy kind of comedians. But I saw them. But the most interesting part of the podcast was watching them get radicalized in real time against the U.S. because they just covered so many incidents in American history that were like, "Hey, wait a minute! The state of things is fucking bullshit." I feel like NBA 2K would have had more sauce if it was LeBron James NBA 2K. That's what I'm saying. That's what I feel like. I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing that it isn't attached to a celebrity's name. Maybe it's a neutral thing, but I kind of miss it. I don't know. It's a little bit of it's a fine line to ride because on the one hand, football, baseball, American football, all of these are team sports. So it is challenging to it's not healthy, I think, to focus on like one guy out of an entire team. Like I've been thinking about this with that Erling Haaland guy in the Norwegian team, right? Like he became like the main character of the Norwegian team, which, you know, fun for the memes, fun for everything else, but like it feels, how do I put this? Like it feels like it's neglecting the other players, and that doesn't feel nice. Tiger Woods PGA Tour was fun series up until, well, the scandals. That tracks. Yeah, that's why they put John Madden on the name. That's true. That's true. That's true as hell, actually, because John Madden wasn't on any team. He was just a commentator guy. He was a neutral third observer party. Exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point, question mark. Okay. There we go. Yeah. Oh wait, actually, I didn't. I did say something. So I was talking with my parents about the World Cup a little bit earlier. Hang on, Norwegian goalkeeper. Oh wait, Preston got back to me. We do not know if Uma Musume are heavier than a normal human being. In their bios where it's supposed to say how much they weigh, it's always dodging the question. Okay, so it is probably... Okay, so this guy's name is Orhan Nyland. So the reason that I bring up Orhan Nyland is because I was talking with my parents about the World Cup, and they specifically mentioned this guy. My mom specifically brought this guy up because she found him very handsome. I can kind of see it. I do think it's funny that at least two guys on the Norwegian team have man buns. That feels like a fun coincidence. Maybe they're really trying to play up the Viking ankle. Okay, we do not know in their bios where it's supposed to say how much they weigh. It's always dodging the question. It seems like they're around human weight, though. Okay, yeah. Okay, so for my 2 cents, I'm going to say that Uma Musume are probably slightly heavier than a typical human of the same shape and size, just to account for muscle density and how much stronger they would have to be than a regular human being. For what it's worth. It's really sad that they stopped putting John Madden's name on football games as well, though, because I think they stopped doing that as well, right? Like, now it's just NFL 20K. I remember there used to be a curse associated with whoever NFL player was on the cover of a Madden game. They'd either get injured or do real bad the next season. Norse genetics really runs strong in the Norwegian team. It kind of rules. I love that Erling Haaland's sister looks exactly like him. So hang on. So, Erling Haaland's sister looks exactly the same as he does. Like, they're the same person. It fucking rules. Very strong family resemblance. Madden passed away, so I think it was more out of respect. That's true, actually. You know what? You're right. Ubisoft still put Tom Clancy's name on their shit after he died, and it felt scummy when they did that. I see. You know what? That's fair. I can more than accept that. I think there is an argument to be had, like, oh, it's keeping their memory alive, but at the same time, I feel like that argument doesn't hold much water when, I don't know, it doesn't hold much water when it's the purpose of attaching their name isn't really to keep memories alive, but to kind of continue selling a product. I think in that case, I think the more respectful move is just admit them where they would have been placed. Okay. I didn't know Tom Clancy was dead. I didn't know that Tom Clancy had passed, I mean. Agree, it feels like it would have been more there to sell more copies, which is lame, Ubisoft. Listen, no matter what Ubisoft does, they are on my permanent shit list. Listen, no matter what Ubisoft does, it's wrong. They're just... they've been scummy for a long time. They haven't done anything to me that would offend me personally or that would affect me personally. But they've hurt enough people that I care about to know that they're scum. God, remember the quaint joy that we had at that one forum post that was always trust the 3Bs, Bethesda, BioWare, and Blizzard? What an innocent time. What a delightfully innocent time. With how they've treated my favorite platformer hero, Rayman, I struggle to forgive them. There's another person who they've heard to add to my list. Although I have heard some optimistic things about like the most recent Rayman announcement, but you know, it's the damage is done. I don't know if it was innocent back then. It might have been extremely naive. Well, okay, I guess it was innocent in the way of like, I don't know. There's a fine line to tread between ignorance and innocence. I never fuck with any of their catalogs though. I do still have copies of. I do have a copy of Half-Life, not Half-Life, Mass Effect. Mass Effect and Half-Life feel like they have very similar names, even though they're completely different. Does that make sense? Like, is that hashtag relatable, or am I out of line? I still have a copy of Mass Effect 1, I think, somewhere in my library. Yeah, no, the 3Bs have fallen extremely mightily. Okay, I have a copy of Mass Effect 1 in my Steam library. Which is going to be interesting. I also technically have Knights of the Old Republic on there. I'll have to get back to Knights of the Old Republic at some point. I feel like I'm going to be dissatisfied until I can finish that game, even though I found it extremely difficult because I didn't use a guide to build my character. And I also didn't know what I was doing or how the game mechanics really worked. It's really funny that like if you check under the hood of any reasonably popular or mechanically advanced game back in the day, it really, if you look under the hood, it really is just like them essentially porting dice rolls for their favorite tabletop game system to a computer. Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 are still some of my favorite games of all time. I gotta learn to play them, yeah. Like, this happened with Fallout, with the general universal role-playing system, until they had to change they had to kind of file off the serial numbers. Because I think the company that was in charge of, that was able to license them that system was like, eventually was like, yeah, no, we're not fucking with you no more. I stopped playing Knights of the Old Republic during a free trial on Switch when I had to do that shooter segment after you get off the first planet. Knights of the Old Republic is on the Switch. Okay, do you mean Knights of the Old Republic, the MMO, or Knights of the Old Republic, the video game from, I want to say, like 2001? $2003. Okay. They ported KOTOR 1 and 2 to the Switch. Oh, not the BioWare game. No, the BioWare game. It's been on Switch for a while. Damn, that's crazy. In December 2025, Casey Hudson would be directing Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic, an upcoming action role-playing and spiritual successor game to the Knights of the Old Republic. That's crazy. Yada yada yada. Remake announced to be developed by Aspyr. Later replaced by Saber Interactive. Interesting. God. Check out this development section. The thing that seemed to stand out is that the current game is almost exactly what we envisioned almost 3 years ago. Remember when video games had a 3-year turnaround? Turret sections are bad, but they're extremely few in both games. That's good to know. Character design and writing. Character design was a collaborative process between the game's art, writing, and design teams. Concept art director John Gallagher said that artists produced numerous variations for major characters while attempting to preserve the visual language of the films. The team did not always agree on individual designs. Gallagher opposed Darth Malak's prosthetic jaw concept and left its development to other artists after his objections were overruled. Interesting. Most of the dialogue recorded was spoken in Galactic Basic, represented by English. However, around a tenth of the script was written in Huttese. Word? Okay. Mike Gallo used Ben Burtt's Star Wars Galactic Phrasebook and Travel Guide to translate English into Huttese. The key to recording alien dialogue is casting the right actor for the part, O'Farrell said. Over the years, I've had actors take to Huttese like a fish to water, but the opposite is also true. What does that mean, O'Farrell? What is that? I've had actors take Huttese like a fish to water, but the opposite is also true. Like, do they suck at English but speak perfect Huttese? What does that mean? In the past, I've had to line read when an actor copies my performance, 150 plus Huttese lines into an actor to make it work. You think Rada the Hutt knows Huttese? I think Rada the Hutt knows Ball. I can't speak to his knowledge of Huttese. I love 1, but in 2 Mogs 1 with the caveat that 2 is genuinely unfinished, and to get to the complete experience you gotta download the cut content mod. That's heartbreaking. Oh yeah, here we go. On November 11th, 2021, a Nintendo Switch version was released. How about that? Okay. I was about to say like the whole thing with like 2 Mogs 1 with the caveat being that 2 is genuinely unfinished, and to get to the complete experience you gotta download the cut content mod. I was gonna say that's kind of like what happened with New Vegas and Fallout 3. But Fallout 3 is the one that kind of feels unfinished. Like, don't get me wrong, there's parts of New Vegas that feel like some corners were definitely cut. But I don't know, 3's ending is just so notoriously bad. Like most of the end, like the original ending at least. Do you think like even the writers are pissed off they had to do the whole thing with like, I'm sorry my friend, but no. This destiny is yours alone. Like that part? I imagine they were, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe they thought it was Kino. Maybe they thought it was Peak. Who knows? I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall of that room. Even I know about it, the Fallout 3's dog shit ending, and I ain't even played a Fallout. The writers didn't give a fuck, considering what I heard. That would be really fun. I think that's probably the least bad outcome. I think if a game's writing sucks and it's because the writers themselves didn't give a fuck, I think that's like neutral at worst. Funny at best. I don't really like Fallout 3 all that much, so I think it's hilarious. Now that being said, the material conditions that led to the writers not really giving a fuck should also factor into it. But for my agenda purposes, it's delicious. Listen, Fallout 3 is a video game. Fallout 3 is occasionally even a good video game. The light that I felt enter my eyes when I sat down for a summer to play through Fallout New Vegas was completely absent from my entire playthrough of Fallout 3. And you know what? Maybe that's on me for playing Fallout New Vegas before playing Fallout 3. But I think if your game does not stand up to the test of time, to the test of slightly better hardware, slightly better optimization for the engine, I think it's not unfair to criticize it. The Fallout 2 ending compared to Fallout 3 is like, holy downgrade. I think the thing is that, I don't know. The Fallout 2 ending at least feels like it has more weight to the fate of the world, right? Because at the end, they don't really talk about it, but your home village does become a thriving society with the thing that you've been chasing all game. Like Arroyo, for all intents and purposes, effectively becomes a mini utopia within the wasteland, because now you have good water, decent decent agriculture. You've revivified a dying land that suffered tremendously throughout the game, and you saw it suffer firsthand. You went back to your home village, and the Enclave had killed basically everybody. And for Fallout 3, it's like, yeah, no, the Brotherhood took over the water plant, and now they're distributing free water bottles. How about that? Like, it just feels completely empty. I mean, and like, this is remedied to some extent by the fact that, like, in Broken Steel, you do see the Brotherhood shipping out bottles of purified water. You do see them, like, distributing it, and it having, it's nice to see that your efforts didn't amount to nothing, but it feels relatively empty. Like, maybe it's just because they can't really have it impact how you play the game too much. Also, Fallout 3 didn't have its own version of Frank Horrigan, which is just such a miss. Like, listen, you gotta have a memorable, cool bad guy. And Colonel Autumn was just not that guy. Frank Horrigan was that guy because he was basically Bane. All right, he was Absolute Bane before Absolute Bane had even been considered. Oh my god, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the Master and the Enclave are two different lines that are both very delicious. One of them is, so the Master is like trying to develop a new society from the ashes of the old one, which is cool. Yeah, interesting, great. And it's like gonna take away the free will and possibly destroy humanity, and that's like not great. And you have to kind of have this dialogue with them because in theory the mutants are very well equipped to suffer the harshness of the wasteland. You don't want to be turned into a mutant because it's a horrific process that seems extremely painful, and you become, it has a severe toll on your mind, but, maybe he's got a point. Or at least he's trying to do something rather than continue, than these other areas of the wasteland, which are, either Wild West style towns that have very little law to their name, or are like the Brotherhood, who are such dickheads in Fallout 1. Like, genuinely, I think Fallout 1 really solidifies the fact that the Brotherhood of Steel is only really looking out for the Brotherhood of Steel. When I got a talk no jutsu, the mutant freak said life is still worth living despite the circumstances being that they can't nut. Or actually, no, I think that they can, but it's just like no, I think the mutants can nut. It just doesn't. They're shooting blanks, for lack of a better term. Which is fine. I think that's definitely that's like the least important materially speaking to the individual. That's like the least important aspect of it. But it's different for everyone. But yeah, so that's why the Master is interesting, because it is an example of somebody trying to create something new out of the ashes of the old society. Meanwhile, the Enclave is interesting because they are very much this fascist regression. They represent people clinging to the old ways and these ideas that are now effectively obsolete in the wasteland, and quite frankly were like the inciting incident to the current state of affairs in the world. They're kind of bending over backwards because they're trying to make sense of, they're trying to retain significance and control and exploitation over people who have fewer resources, fewer capital than them. And so it becomes this very poignant commentary on the ideals of fascism, the current state of the US versus the ideals of freedom that it's based on. So that's also really interesting. Meanwhile, Fallout 3, it's just the Enclave, the fucking Enclave again. Except this time they've got something that you want, and that's why you have to fight them. And it's like, or it's not even something that you want necessarily. It's something that your dad wanted, and you're just overly attached to him. So now I guess it's something that you want too. And like, that's not on. That's not interesting. And there's not even really a good reason to care about most of the denizens of the wasteland. Everybody's such an asshole to you when you first meet them, and they only get talking sweet to you after you do favors for them, which, fair. But at the same time, it's not like, I'm not going to say that like Arroyo in Fallout 2 was I don't know how to put it. Like, I don't care if the world in Fallout 3 gets worse. I cared about it getting worse in Fallout 2 because people were already taking steps to build new societies, and there was injustice and, violence and negative, and the very typical kind of post-apocalyptic bullshit in these societies. There was slavery, there was gambling, there were the development of new drugs, the manufacturing and distribution of those drugs. But at least they were like building something. In Fallout 3, it feels like everybody's just kind of all right with the way things are. Nobody's really trying to make something out of anything, except maybe the people in Rivet City, but even they're just doing very, very kind of ambiguous scientific work and research. You could say that the Brotherhood is trying to do something good, but they're really just killing mutants, and that's not really building anything. That's just like having a reason to have like big stinky green orcs in my post-apocalyptic game. That's true. In Fallout 3, the Brotherhood of Steel aren't complete assholes. Pretty neutral about that, but the idea that the DC chapter of the Brotherhood are totally different in their ethos and pathos compared to the West Coast is, at the very least, very funny. That is true. Imagine you're part of like a regressive technophiliac secret society, essentially, whose main reason to exist is to preserve technology and to research it. Not even for any real beneficial means, but just because you wanna. And your chapter in particular gets ousted from the core body of it because it's too woke. Because you're espousing such radical principles as, hey, maybe we should use this technology to help the broader population. Real talk, how much hope do you have for the new Obsidian Fallout, considering they made the Outer Worlds twice, which have been just okay both times, and it's been 16 years since New Vegas? I don't care about the new Obsidian Fallout. It could be fantastic. You know what? It might be. It might very well be a really good game. I don't really care about it. I've long since kind of severed my attachment to Fallout as a series. Like, I no longer look at Fallout the TV show or anything and go like, oh, what a perversion of this. It's like, okay, Fallout has a TV show now. Jog on. Like, if it's good, I might play it, maybe. I don't know. It's Microsoft developing it, and I think that they're still on the BDS boycott list, so I'm not really incentivized to give them my money, but, maybe it will be good, and that'll be a good thing, but, I think at this point the conversation should maybe less be, is the game gonna be good, and more so, what's gonna happen to the teams after they finish the game. How far the mighty have fallen. Yeah... No, at this point, any AAA game, the thing that I'm most concerned about isn't even really to what extent is the game good, because it's gonna be somebody's cup of tea. That's the thing. Like, video games have such a wide variety of choice. You are spoiled for choice in the current gaming market. Everybody's making a shooter. Everybody's making a new RPG. It feels like the field is more active than it ever has been. But at the same time, the actual people creating these works of art, they are works of art, are being neglected if they are under a larger publisher. They are being exploited in almost every single case. And it feels... I don't know how to put it. Like, especially... And this is true of any team, but it's especially true of AAA teams. I just feel like extremely wary of anything connected to them. It's not that I despise... Okay, no, the state of it is despicable. I don't automatically despise any new video game. I just don't really feel all that much for them anymore. I think I'm not a gamer anymore. I don't think I self-identify as a gamer anymore. I don't know. There's lots of things to be dissatisfied with, I guess, is the gist of my response. It really doesn't matter whether it's good or not, because either I'll get to it and it'll be good and I'll enjoy it, or I'll never get to it and it doesn't matter whether it's good or not because I'm not going to have played it. And finally, there's the third possible answer, is that they'll change their minds and then they'll cancel it mid-development, and nobody will know how it'll have been unless, some enterprising individual sneaks out a prototype copy out of the Microsoft offices and we get like a sort of Duke Nukem situation where we are able to access the game pretty essentially completely. I don't know. it's a great time to release a video game. It's a tough time to be a game developer, from what from what I've seen of everything. Shockingly, the only team where I've heard that hasn't had like super huge layoffs after pretty much every release has been Nintendo. But those guys just do whatever the hell they want, and it's not like, and they're scummy in different ways. I don't know. It's just become much more difficult to become excited about video games since now every single time I buy one, it feels a little bit like I'm holding a blood diamond in my hands. Well, the big wheel keeps on turning, though. And in the meantime, all kinds of avenues are available for supporting the developers and their own personal projects, which is a bright spot in this hellhole. You know, granted, not all of those projects are my cup of tea, but I'm glad. But like I said, they're going to be somebody's cup of tea, and somebody will get excited about them. Okay. There we go. What video game was I excited for? I can't even really remember one. I think the one that I was kind of interested in was Esoteric Ebb, and that seems to have been released safely and without any issues. It genuinely is kind of hard to get excited about some new releases, because even if a game does crazy well, the dev team will get laid off. Yeah. I don't know. It's tough. It's... Like I said, the market right now is... The job market right now for everybody is extremely brutal, but that seems to be especially true for anybody employed in a creative field that isn't, like, publishing a weekly manga, for example, in which case, you know, you're being worked to death anyway. That's not something to laugh about. I don't know. It's fascinating. I do feel like something's got to give eventually. I feel like we are about to see... Ideally, we will see within the next couple of years, some kind of major paradigm shift to how teams are operated or how they are handled. Because, you know, the thing about laying off your team every single time you start a new project or you finish a project is that eventually it'll cost more to assemble a new team than it will to save costs than... You know, eventually you're going to be losing more money by laying everybody off than by just retaining a team of semi-competent people. Or at least people who are familiar with the product, with the company culture and everything. Like, onboarding is very expensive, and that's why nobody wants to hire new employees nowadays, but it's also why I feel like a lot of places are lacking in cultural cohesion. The good old manga meat grinder, oiled by the blood of artists versus the crumbling yet ever-growing gamer market. It's bleak, baby. No kidding. And, you know, now we're also seeing independent animation studios throwing their hat into the ring. Thankfully, there's only been a couple of horror stories about that, but... It's a creative field in a late-stage capitalist environment, which means that at some point, we're going to get more horror stories about terrible exploitation and whatnot. I'm not accusing anybody of being guilty of it right now. I think currently it's maybe one of the better fields to work in, if you don't mind the loony fans, but... it's difficult to be optimistic about anything in these circumstances. That being said, just simply due to the fact that it's impossible to stop people from creating things. It's the brightest part of this is that just because of how difficult it is to dissuade people from making things altogether, it does mean that we're unlikely to see, at least within our lifetime, a point where people just decide to stop making art, which I think is the ultimate worst case scenario. I think that even if it's under conditions where they have to work another job or they have to deal with exploitative work environments or whatever, what have you, right? People will still find the strength and the means, they'll find a way to squeeze water from a stone to create something, simply because I think it's impossible to ever really shake off that desire. I think that's the only hopeful part of this whole affair, is that regardless of how badly creatives are treated in society, it's unlikely that we will ever see people stop making things. And that's really all that's needed. Obviously we want better conditions for everyone, but it's still that little light of hope that despite everything, the desire to create will always be there. Yeah. That I've actually been thinking about this recently in terms of, because of like, I've especially been thinking about it in terms of like, weirdly enough, something that got me catalyzed about thinking about this is the fact that I got suspended from Twitter. That, if I don't have a Twitter account, how should I get my name out there? Especially since the VTuber space is 90% on Twitter. And it's like, I'm just going to have to find other places to infiltrate. I'm just going to have to find ways to persist, and, maybe it'll be difficult, maybe it's not going to be particularly productive, but I want to continue doing these things that I do because they make me happy. I feel like I don't know if it's a productive use of my time. Maybe I'll look back on, maybe I'll be in my nursing home and I'll look back on this and be like, man, I really fucked up big time by being a VTuber for 5 years. But, I want to at least keep doing this and see what it leads me to. Especially, in the upcoming year, now that I'll have more time, I feel like it'll be extremely worthwhile to pursue more creative things as Pabs. Because ultimately it's not about what is against you. It's about like, because there's always going to be things against you. The real kind of logistical barriers are, how much do you think you can get away with personally, and how much are you willing to do? Well, no, actually, there's way more things like that. Money is a huge barrier, for example. Like, it's very expensive to maintain a game studio. Like, it's so expensive. Like, I've never even done it before, and I can tell you it's so fucking expensive. But, money remains a huge limiting factor. So I think maybe the way that I've been looking at it is the thing that I want to do is something that can make creating art accessible for others, or to enable others to create things. Like, whoever made like the programs that I use, like things like OBS, for example, are open source. They are created by people with the express purpose of it being free forever for everyone who wants it. And I think more than ever, things like that are vitally important. Like, especially given how digital everything is, having digital means to produce things, freeware things that can, freeware programs like Fire Alpaca, freeware programs like Metabang Paint, even programs that you can get fairly on the cheap like Paint Tool Sci, are all vitally important. I feel the same way about making music, TBH. Way too many people are making bank using fucking Suno AI music software while I'm struggling to get my shit out there amidst the sea of Drek. But I'll still keep going because it's my passion, my love, my life, and the robots will never take that away from me. Yeah, that's really Yeah, and even if it wasn't the robots, it'd be like people trying to leverage botting, or people trying to. There are always people who try to get shortcuts to get their stuff out there, and sometimes they're even successful, right? Like there are people who try to go viral off of really dumb, banal tweets, and then once they do have that virality, they sell the account and then they just start over. Which, sucks, but I guess it's a living. Like, there's been all kinds of barriers because, broadly speaking, anybody who has more resources than you is going to be more likely to succeed as a creative. Just because of the fact that they can focus on their creative stuff more, just because of the fact that they can, like, invest more money into their creative stuff. But at the end of the day, the things that you create are still worth getting out there. Like, if for no other reason than for your own self-satisfaction. More than anything, because I genuinely believe that once you start the process of working as creative, doing creative things, right? Once you start making things, it is impossible to stop. If you told me that I could not draw for a month, right? If I could get $10,000 by not drawing for a month, I would struggle for that. Not even because not even because I have things I want to draw, but also just because I draw even if I don't think about drawing. Like, I'll doodle on a piece of paper while I'm waiting on a phone call. I'll think about the composition of the things that I look at. It's suffused within me. It's a demon that's never gonna leave my body. All right? It is like, it's in there for the long haul. Like, it's gonna be there forever. Possibly forever. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll be so old and decrepit that I'll like forget that I was ever an artist. But like that also seems unlikely. By that point I'll have lost so much that I'm not even really me anymore. So really, there's nothing much to worry about in that respect. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways you could put it that, like, oh, it's to get your voice out there. Even if it's not heard by that many people, you're still joining that massive chorus of the human spirit of creation. I find these to be lacking as answers because they don't really have anything material. Right? They're not connected to, it's a very grand ideal, but I don't feel a connection to that. What I do, however, feel a connection to is the fact that I want to do it. I see others do it. I've seen other people. Since I was a kid, I saw people draw. I read comics. I watched other people. I didn't watch other people draw, but I was fascinated by how you could use images to communicate thoughts. I was enamored by the concept. I wanted to draw. And ever since then, I've not been able to stop. 80-year-old Pabs. I was a bundle of rice once, I think. Oh, wait, what? Oh god, the light's getting brighter. I hope I make it to 80. I don't know. Something about my lifestyle makes it feel like I'm like the bell's gonna toll relatively quicker for me. This motherfucker TX2, poser-ass motherfucker who tried and failed originally to make what I could only call blue jeans and a t-shirt music, then switched to the most derivative pseudo-emo bullshit while also propagating the sexualization of goth and emo women. Oh my god, I hate that guy. I hate him too, just off of what you told me. I got swept up in hating. I forgot what reminded me of him, but like, god. Yeah, no. God, the sexualization of goth women pisses me off so much. The sexualization of any kind of subculture, or like, listen, I don't know how to put it. Like, it's fine if you think goth women are hot. That's not really the problem. That's not really my beef. My beef is that now everybody assumes that goth women are like hyper sexy freaks, and it's just, I don't know, those are people. Those are real people with like agency and variety and personality. It's weird to talk about them like that. It's weird to talk about them like they're some kind of mythical fake creature that are all kind of uniform. It's disturbing, man. I don't fuck with that. Yeah, the goth Dommy Mommy nonsense. That shit pisses me off so bad too. Like back when everybody was like, "Step on me," and it was just like, man, I don't know. I would not feel comfortable doing that, and I don't know that you should feel so comfortable doing that, man. I think we all gotta step back and relax a little bit. More than anything, because I imagine that it led to like a huge influx of real weird dudes who just were like trying to get laid at any of these, which, you know, I imagine was always a problem to some extent. You know, that's going to be a problem no matter where you go, that dudes will enter a scene just to get laid. But, you know, I imagine it was especially bad for the goth scene. My regards to our warriors in corpse paint. Brought so many posters that it genuinely made me reconsider my stance on gatekeeping. Yeah. First time chat, really. Meowdy, hey, how you doing? We're discussing the infiltration of subcultures by posers. How's your night going? Yeah, no. I don't know. Gatekeeping is a bizarre phenomenon because it depends on like what you define as gatekeeping and what the material effects of that gatekeeping is. Right? So like saying you can't be this or that because you haven't done this or that, right? To some extent I don't agree with that. Like I think having an interest in the topic is maybe not sufficient to kind of get you in, but I don't think people should be discouraged from wanting to get into something, or, you know, from having only a surface level knowledge and understanding of it, because, you know, that's always the opportunity to learn more. That's the opportunity for growth. Midday for me right now, working on art fight stuff. Nice. Oh, you're also on art fight? Sick. Which team are you on? Are you also on comedy, or are you on mystery, or was it drama? I think it might have been drama. I could literally check. I could literally open up my browser just now to check, but I'm kind of getting sick with these. I'm kind of doing some sick stunts on these ruffles. Gatekeeping should depend on the intention of the person being gate kept against. Yeah, I think that's maybe the best way to put it. I think intention of the person being gate kept against is very important. Because I don't disagree that a particular group or particular scene should have like tastemakers, and, you know, maybe like being able to say, yeah, no, these are like our equivalent of canonical texts. You should probably get into those before you like want to participate. You don't need to get into those before you participate in the scene, but if you want to like call yourself part of it, it would be really, really good if you absorbed what these have to say and what these are. Comedy, being a jester felt like it was an obligation to join comedy. Sick. Yeah. Yeah, I think it depends on both the intentions of the person being gate kept against and the intentions of the person doing the gatekeeping. Because don't get it twisted. There are some people who want to gatekeep things just because like they condescend to neophytes, which it's a whole can of worms. It can be for any number of reasons, but typically it's not really productive to creating a community. But on the other hand, I do think that like there should be some having standards as a member of a community for what should be and should not be in a community isn't necessarily a bad thing. On one hand, I want to get people into the things I like, but on the other, if you aren't going to try and actually engage with the culture and are only into it for the surface aesthetics, or just to get laid, I'm going to kick your ass out. Like, if you want to be goth, then everyone has to start somewhere, but you gotta realize it's a subculture based around music and DIY ethics. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good approach to it, is that everybody's got to start somewhere. And, it's very easy. Well, not always easy, but at least it's very clear when someone is trying to engage with things genuinely and is maybe just clumsy with it versus just trying to exploit a scene or a movement or what have you for their own benefit. Ruffles are a pain in the butt. I just do an up and down squiggle and call it a day most times. Yeah. Honestly, that's what I should have done, but I honestly think that. But sometimes I feel a degree of satisfaction just trying to think out the ruffles. I don't know. I like when things make sense to my brain after I draw them. Like it shouldn't have. I don't want it to be on the level of like a technical diagram, but I find a lot of satisfaction from making it so. Like, if I recall correctly, right, I remember watching... I don't remember the name of the guy who made the video. There was a guy who was really knowledgeable about hip-hop and rap history, and he was able to provide a pretty good overview / summary of the Kendrick Drake beef when it was like on everybody's mind, right? And he actually mentioned that I think in the rap scene they did have a literal group of people called the gatekeepers, who were like the tastemakers for rap. Like they were like, yeah, no, they were the ones who had the influence to say who's going to be hot, who's going to be pushed, who's going to be kind of left behind for now. And that struck me as, I thought that could be a bad idea, but on the other hand, I can see the benefits to that being almost sort of centralized. But on the other hand, I don't know. I feel like it lacks a sort of natural touch. But on the other hand, I can understand why as well they did that. Probably FD signifier. That's probably it. That's probably the guy. Yeah, no, that's where I heard about the gatekeepers for the first time. And like I said, it's complicated because on the one hand, I think like having a group of people who say, yeah, this is the guy who should be pushed and this is the guy who we're not going to really support all that much is not great, but I can understand why it was maybe prevalent in the rap scene. I can understand the social circumstances that led to it in these specific circumstances. So, also I wasn't there, so it's not like I can really speak to anything. Right? Like, at the time, it probably made the most sense for them to do that. I don't know. Maybe I should look more into the gatekeepers because I feel like it's a fascinating topic. Why did my music cut out? Oh no, it's just a very quiet track. It worked for a while, but it also led to Drake, so it's extremely flawed. Yeah, that's what I was mainly thinking, is that it works until it's one of those systems that works until it doesn't. And that's true for a lot of things. That's true of on the grand scheme of things, that's true for literally everything. But it's like I said, I wasn't there. It probably made sense to do that at the time given the social circumstances, but yeah, there's no such thing as a perfect system. Also, I'm really happy with how the line art came out here. Okay. I'm probably going to add full black on the hair vents here. I don't think this color goes anywhere else that I have shown on the art. But yeah, I'm always interested in like these pre-internet ways of propagating information, music, and culture, because I think I talked about this last week as well. I've recently started reading digitalized copies of Fact Sheet 5, which was this zine that collected information of other zines and gave short one paragraph reviews of them. Sometimes 2 paragraphs if they really liked it. And it was really fascinating to see how many newsletters, information, how many different things were compiled and distributed before the internet. Because it really was just like a mailing list that you essentially subscribed to for each one. You know, you sent these people like $5 and then they'd give you 5 issues. You know, it was a very sort of organic, yeah, that seems fair kind of system, which is fascinating to me as somebody who has never really lived outside of the internet's influence. Like, I was born in 1999, right? I don't really remember a time before I could go on the computer. Which definitely isn't true for 90% of the people who submitted scenes to Fact Sheet 5. I don't know. I've become somewhat interested in an almost sort of like doomsday prepper sort of way. The tape trading culture of early punk metal scenes is so fascinating to me, right? I don't know. It's so striking because it requires such a degree of initiative and volition that it just seems hard to fathom nowadays. And you know, it was these smaller publications and these like people-led activities which really created a, you know, which were like the backbone of so many people's lives. And you know, to some extent we still have that. You know, we still have things like you know, the VTuber, like, not to toot my own horn, but VTubers are an example of this, if somewhat, how do I put this? Like, the order of operations is extremely twisted, but they are still an example of a movement that is now that is like fairly entrenched in DIY ethos. Feels like algorithms dictate so much taste that people have forgotten how to search for what they want. If it isn't served up to them, then they'll just ignore it. Yeah, and even if you do search for it, sometimes it's difficult to find. Like, for example, the local rave scene where I'm at, I feel like I either find out about events through somebody posting about it on a Discord server I'm in, or just by chancing upon a flyer. Sometimes I'll see like a notice for an event that sounds super interesting that's already ended because I just nobody told me about it, and that I didn't get time to kind of prepare for it. And you know, that is very much the issue that you're talking about here. Like, I don't really know how to search for those events, but even if I feel like even if I do look up like events near me, it's occasionally hit or miss whether I'll actually find anything, or if there might not be anything at all. And I think part of the reason for that is that now it's just like, it is very much that even trying to maintain these is punished, if not outright by the people who host the platforms that are used for these purposes, but also just like the maintenance aspect of it. Like, you know, we've all had Discord servers where we go inside and it's kind of dead in there, right? And that's really not anybody's fault. I'm gonna lighten up the colors for the dress and the gloves here, just a tiny bit. Oh god, that's okay. That's lightening them up too much. Okay, maybe like this. Yeah, okay. I don't know. It's tough because I want to be able to enact a change to improve the conditions of things, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure that I would not have the volition to do that. Exactly, like, I didn't know I had such a strong heavy music scene where I'm at until like last year, because I couldn't find the bars where these bands play. Had to ask around a lot before finding it out. Yeah. Yeah, that's the funny perhaps like third aspect of gatekeeping is that they're not even really trying to gatekeep it. It's just that nobody really thought to ask. Occasionally with dire consequences. Or like even if you do ask, maybe you're talking to you just happen to be talking to the one rube who doesn't really know what's what. So you know, it's a little bit of the luck of the dice in finding your community, or at least finding communities that are relevant to your interests near you. But yeah, like I said, the VTuber scene is a fascinating example of like DIY stuff kind of arising ex facto to the corporatization, because originally it was very much like a corporate-led environment. Like, you know, the main ways that people learned about VTubing are through Kizuna Ai, which was a who is a corporate VTuber to this day, and Hololive or Nijisanji, which again are corporations. But then, like, you know, they were like, I want to do that too. That looks cool. And, you know, then they found out about things like Live 2D Studio, things like Vroid, you know, the rest of the things that are part of the community. And, you know, maybe they were probably a fan of whatever corporation or talent kind of inspired them to do that. Everybody has, like, that first exposure that either kind of makes you feel like, hey, that was a little weird, or, you know, they're like, how do I put it? VTubing is an extremely unique medium because it kind of presupposes a lot of other things, because like the way that most people get into it is because like there is some funny anime girl cursing while playing a video game, which, you know, is fairly typical. But at the same time, it's like, you know, to do that, you have to be, one, a person who watches streamers, two, a person who is into anime and wouldn't like thumb their nose at it, and three, somebody who is willing to watch a combination of all three. I didn't even know about indie VTubers were such a widespread thing until getting into VServer. I only knew like Hololive. Exactly. It's really interesting, and I don't know, I'm sure there's probably examples of this happening in music too, where like, but, well, no, I think in music it's probably the other way. It's typically the other way around, where it's an indie scene first, and then it's picked up by corporations as it's attempted to be monetized and exploited. So it's really fascinating in that regard, and I think it is unfortunately why so many of its aspects are the way they are. Like, listen, I try not to I try not to like talk about like idol culture too much, because it's a very broad subject that can invite a lot of unfair criticisms, and sometimes actually absolutely justified criticisms. But at the same time, it's like this was very much like something that was developed. This was very much a medium that was pioneered by corporations, which is why I imagine that a lot of VTuber fans are like that. I don't know. It's there's probably a whole anthropological dissertation you could write on VTuber fans, their kind of anthropological origins, and how they react to specific stimuli and information. That reminds me of a really funny post I saw one day that said that there is no creature more vile and disgusting than a webcomics reader, except perhaps a webcomics author. And that applies to literally everything. That is universal. But yeah. I do think that indie VTubing has come a long way from its roots. I do think that that it's developed its own kind of unique. Well, no, I don't think it's quite developed its own unique formats and discussions just yet. I do think it does still feel like we haven't completely divorced ourselves from being influenced by things like Hololive and, Niji Sanji to some extent, much less now, oh my god. But, I still feel like we're still very much hitched to the corporate truck, and I feel like we're really going to start to see some sparks fly once we unhitch ourselves from that. But we are a long way from that. We're gonna need to install at least 3 or 4 more patches of Woke before we're ready for all that, even remotely. Like, we're gonna install 3 or 4 more patches of Woke, and we still will be under-leveled and fighting for our fucking lives to kind of make this our own. But like I said, the bright spot is that there is still that DIY ethos. It's more so the other way around for music. To bring it to emo, there's a large section of second wave emo fans, people who dig MCR and stuff, who don't even know about the original wave of emotional hardcore that came from DC in the mid-80s. And even less of the super corporate poisoned recent emo wave that are only in it for money and soullessly peddling surface aesthetics. Looking at you, TX2, you ass! Yeah. Is that is that where the term like third wave, fourth wave, and other such waves comes from? I never knew what that really meant. Like, I originally heard it in like third wave, fourth wave ska in that context because of listening to like Ska Tune Network and Streetlight Manifesto, but is that what that means? Like it's like the layers removed from the origin of the scene? That makes a lot of sense, actually, if that's the case. Okay, I might have to go slightly lighter on some of this. Like, particularly the ones up here. More or less, yeah, layers removed and like the rise and fall of popularity. Ah, okay. It's a little bit of both, okay. Interesting. I've always found that music in general has the best examples of community building in terms of like a creative work, because it really is just all about the people in music, right? Like, it's especially if you're like a live artist, right? If you're trying to like make a band with somebody's from your workplace or whatever, or however you're trying to make a band, you need both people to play to and people to play with. So I think it really lends itself to being more about people and community compared to things like webcomics where it's like one author and however many readers, or video games where it's however many developers and however many players. I really do feel like music is like a macrocosm, or like a more intense example of kind of what happens with every community. I don't know. As I've become older, but maybe not necessarily wiser, I've started to become more and more interested in the development of organizations and how people kind of motivate themselves to do anything. That might sound a little harsh, but that's more or less what I mean. Is like, okay, so this band, this group, this whatever, right, created a thriving music scene in 1988 or whatever. How exactly did they do that? How exactly did it come about? And a lot of this is kind of just butterfly effect shit, right? Like, it is just very much like this one person heard about it and this other person heard about it, and they were the best game in town, so they just kind of naturally became more popular that way. And that's sufficient as an answer, not necessarily satisfying. It always feels like there has to be like some kind of secret. There isn't, right? That's the most frustrating aspect of all of this, is that there's no specific thing you can do to guarantee success, except maybe throwing a shitload of money at it. And even then, that's hit or miss. But I feel like there has to be things that you can do right. There has to be like stratagems you can invoke in order to like it's sort of like a primordial soup almost. Like there has to be like scene like community ogenic aspects and actions that you take that can more easily enable the creation of these organizations, of these efforts and communities. I think that's become interesting to me, mostly just because I have very little interest beyond what I've already done, really. Like, I've never, like, intentionally said I want to be part of a community, right? Or very few times I've been like, I want to be part of a community. The way fandom works in other areas is very different to music. Like, there has to be a scene to thrive, but for a webcomic fandom, you don't exactly need the community aspect. Like, the community is there, but it's less collaborative. Meanwhile, a good fan in a music scene forces you to interact with... Meanwhile, being a good fan in a music scene forces you to interact with the community. Yeah. I think that's a very good way of putting it. And I like the way that you phrase this, like, being a good fan. And, like, you're right, because, like, even for things like webcomics, a webcomic can have a thriving community, even if it doesn't have things like fan art, fan works, what have you. Right? Like, those are maybe signifiers of success, but they are not necessary to the success of like a webcomic, for example. Meanwhile, if you want to be a good fan for whatever band you're trying to support, you do have to show up, you do have to collaborate with other people, you have to collaborate with the artists themselves in some regards. Because, like, you know, maybe the artists themselves are like, yeah, we only really want to play here. Unless somebody wants us to play elsewhere, we're not really going to hang out. And, like, you know, it's almost like a sort of dialogue between because, like, the musicians have to go to where the people are, and the people have to go to where the musicians are. It's a little bit of... It's very much a give and take relationship. Meanwhile, with some webcomics, I wish the fans would actually shut the fuck up for a couple minutes. I'm only fooling. Sort of. I don't know. It's so fascinating to me. I've never been like a huge people guy, but I'm fascinated by how people function, by how they kind of organize themselves, things like the building of nations. While comic artists do go to conventions, which would be the equivalent of doing concerts, it's not exactly the same, but it's there. That's true. Artists and writers do panels as well, not just have booths. That's also very true. And you know what? Now that you mention it, I have felt that before, where I'll go to a random panel at a convention because it sounds interesting, and you know the artist will say, "By the way, I have these social medias," and then I'll follow them. Maybe I should do a panel at my local convention, or at least I should look into what it'll take to ask them for them to reasonably entertain that request. I don't think I'm ready for a booth. Booths feel like they would be kind of scary, especially if you don't own a car. I don't know. Maybe I can find... I don't know. Maybe there is like some logistical way to accomplish it. Pab's panel would go crazy. I would have to do some crazy bullshit to disguise my identity. Because unlike in other circumstances where I can just hide behind the rice bag, or actually maybe I don't know, maybe they would let me perform the panel as my avatar. Who knows? Booth feels more intimate than a panel. Yeah. Also, you're not trying to sell things at a panel. I don't know. I think I have good sleazy salesman vibes, but I don't think I would be much good in a business. Imagine explaining to 30 people at a panel that you primarily make comics about your rice Sona interacting with a passive-aggressive water bucket. Passive-aggressive might not be the best description for Tool. She does hit me on the head sometimes. But, you know, it's all cool. They've learned to hold back. I'm fascinated. I would be fascinated to hear what people think like my relationship with Tool is, because I have like a fairly concrete idea of what it's like. Okay, remove the passive. I would be fascinated to hear what like people's impression of like my relationship with Tool is, to like just based on the comics and what I put out, because like I have a fairly. I don't think it's necessarily complex. I think it's like not always hatred, but I think like what I do draw is primarily the hatred. So I think it maybe like skews the data a little bit for outside observers who aren't inside of my head. God, it would be really funny too, because I would be out here talking about like VTubers and like their activities and what they do, and somebody will be like, "How many followers do you have?" And I'll be like, "A little bit over 100." That might be like the most I'll ever piss anybody off. Oh god. I should do it just for that. I should do it just because. You know what? Coaches don't play. I feel like maybe I do have the qualifications to speak on this. Actually, if I do end up doing a panel, I'll probably have to speak to a couple other people too. Like, I feel like Zed would probably know a thing or two about like some more variety in VTubing activities. Like they've done things like karaoke and merch before. Like I feel like they would be better equipped to discuss like merchandising and the logistics of that. But then they would only have the perspective of an American, which would make it a little bit inaccessible to a Canadian audience. It really feels like that one meme, like, I'm eating cookies and playing video games. God, I hate you so much. What are you, 12? Now I'm drinking lemonade and playing with my toys. I like fire trucks and monster trucks. I don't give a fuck. Tabs, you did a whole auction and court proceeding that was caused by the auction. You're the master of variety. That is true. I do have more range than I give myself credit for, but to be fair, that was back in 2023? Hang on. Let me check something real quick. Affiliate streams, auction blocks, properties. Created March 25th, 2024. No, that was in 2024, so it's been a couple of years. I feel like I need to do some insane bullshit again. The stream with Tool was pretty good for that, but I need to like start doing something that's actually like involves audience interaction at some point in the near future. Otherwise, I'm gonna feel permanently washed. Like, don't get me wrong, the auction stream is a great thing to hang my hat on. But if it's just that, and I haven't done anything else since, I want to be able to do more things. I want to be able to host more events like that. Fuck it, who want to run the Universe 7 with me? Who want to run the Universe 17 with me? Who wants to fight Jiren? We need to craft something other than drawing streams, because we're pretty good at bits. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like... Not good with that, dog. You can take him. I think. I don't know. How indestructible do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? I think you could take Jiren. You know, we'll get you your veggies. Start doing push-ups. You'll be Jiren here in no time. -3. That's so real, actually. I'll never be able to get out of my head that one phrase that's like, I don't need Viagra, the streets made me hard. Just thinking about this... I bring this up because the -3 reminded me of the Mohs scale of hardness. Which I think is maybe the funniest scale. I'm gonna show that bald gray fuck what a real dragon is like! That's a spirit, Michelle. God. The Dragon Ball universe is so goddamn funny, just in general. Thank you for everything, Toriyama. Okay, and then... I do think we would have, like, some Aladdins for the pelvic bones and everything. Okay, so that color is okay, but it's not really... Okay, I'm gonna, like, make this just a tiny bit lighter. Rest easy, Victoria, for real. I'll never get over, after Toriyama's passing, like, there was this one tweet that was like, what Toriyama did for Latin America cannot be understated. And somebody was like, what did he do for Latin America? And somebody said, nos dio todos, which meant he gave us everything. And that is so real. That should touch me real deep. Because, yeah, I don't know who I would have become. I don't know what kind of person I would have been if I hadn't been 4 or 5 years old with my older brother, staying up late to catch the Toonami showing of the most recent Dragon Ball episode. As a child in Ecuador. I don't know who I would... I don't know what that Paps looks like. He would have been a radically different person. No. I think I'm actually gonna forego the pelvic bones down here. Maybe just a couple of quick bits here for the fabric folds, I think. You would have been Spap if not for Dragon Ball. I don't know. I would have definitely become some kind of... I don't know. Like I said, I have no idea who I would have become if I hadn't been really into anime and Dragon Ball during some of the most formative years of my life. I want to say... football? I feel like the two main things you can be into as a child in South America are anime that was dubbed from Japan or or football. Like, those are the two main things. There might be a third at this point, but I don't know. I've been out of the game for too long. I'll have to ask my little cousin when I'm there. You know, what the youth is into these days. Or actually, I could have asked my brother. I should ask my brother maybe about this sometime. Because my brother also watched Dragon Ball and things like that. But he was definitely more of like I don't like to use this term. He was definitely like the jock of the between the two of us. So I think I would have turned out more like my brother, which would have been great for me. But honestly, I'm happy with who I am now. Well, I think I could have changed my approach and made better decisions. I don't think I'll ever regret who I became, or who I am right now. This feels like it could have a little bit more of a gradient to it. Or at least not in transition from one to the other so roughly. That being said, this one's definitely getting like the darker color for the blue right off the bat. Honestly, same with my brother and me. He still enjoyed anime and I still enjoyed playing sports, but he was much more the athlete and I was much more the nerd. Yeah, I think I would have fallen to some other nerdy thing even if I hadn't, like, become, like, a weeb. Like, maybe I would have gotten really into programming at a young age. Who knows? Or maybe I would have gotten really into Western cartoons. That's also possible. I just think as children, you kind of end up filling, like... I'm not going to call them an ecological niche, because that's not what that means, but it's definitely, like, some kind of archetypical niche. I think it's mostly just because it becomes frustrating if your sibling is much better at something than you. Like, if I had tried to compete in sports with my brother, I would have been constantly frustrated. One, because he's actually fairly cracked at sports. And two, because I was a little chubby fat kid, and I wouldn't have had a trainer to keep up. And three, he was older than me, and I would have just been, you know, he's 5 years older than me. So it would have been a huge gulf in physical capabilities. Like, by the time I would have been 9 years old, he would have been like, he would have been 14, right? So imagine, like, pitting a 14-year-old against a 9-year-old. That's... Like, that was a losing battle no matter what. And, you know, you could always be like, oh, but, you know, there's a chance you wouldn't have felt, like, super competitive with him. I'm a competitive guy. Like, shocking, I'm surprisingly competitive as a human being. Maybe that comes through in some aspects and maybe it doesn't, but I do think I actually have a fairly competitive spirit. I don't know, maybe that's not so easily communicated. I feel like most people have the impression that I'm a chill guy, whereas I feel like I am extremely neurotic, but... Or maybe it's a combination of both. I don't really need to know. But yeah, I do think I probably would have fallen to some other flavor of nerdery if I hadn't gotten into like anime. Probably would have still become an artist, I think. There are far too many like flashpoint events in my life that would have like pushed me towards visual art, that I feel confident in saying that even if it hadn't been partially inspired by anime, I would have still done it. Oh yeah, whenever the neighborhood kids wanted to play kickball or American football or basketball, I was always the second choice compared to my brother, but in a way that made me a bit hungry for improvement. That sounds really healthy. Glad for you. No, it sounds like you guys might have been like low-key terrorists on the playground when you combined forces. God, it really is funny looking back in retrospect that there's always going to be like some kid who is just like absolutely cracked at sports. I remember there was this one kid in my high school class. This pair of brothers, actually, really, like, but like one of them was like way more into it than the other. Like, but both of them were like really physically fit, and like I am fairly confident that I saw both of them at some point do a backflip. And like, if those two guys were, I don't think I often saw that both brothers were on the same team. I never saw them do like a like a bros attack. But I'm pretty sure they would have been. But like, you know, over time, one of them became much more interested in things like filmmaking, while the other one remained a big time athlete. So who knows? I actually wonder how the younger one is doing. I said earlier I wasn't really interested in reaching out to anybody from high school, but but you know, I'm a little bit of a nosy fella. I'd still be interested to know how their life is going, especially for the ones that were just like those two guys who were like super chill. Like, I'd like to know how things shook out for them. Hopefully they found some outlet for their creativity. My autistic ass didn't realize a lot of the time they would straight up bully me in favor of my brother until like years later, but it made me able to find my niche in those sports. Like, generally speaking, my brother was better at offense, but I was typically better at defense. That's tough, but yeah, that's also it sounds like it did have at least some positive outcomes. So I'm glad that's the case. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Speaking, my brother was better at offense, but I was better at defense. That's cool. That's cool though. It's cool like when you feel like you have your own specialty though. And you know, I think that's probably even the case when when two siblings are involved in the same thing, they'll probably find their own niches to kind of support themselves and to create their own identity. I don't know, there's probably been studies on this. But it's fun to trade around anecdotal evidence in some cases. Okay, and then we're gonna go like... this? No, hang on, that doesn't seem quite right. Actually, this ruffle also looks a little bit busted. Hang on, let's zoom out a little bit and retry this section. Okay, maybe that's a little bit better. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because during football, I think that also was the case where like I said, I was I was a really chubby kid, so I was unsuited for fast movement. I just could not physically keep up with a lot of the faster kids. So I was typically on the defense as well. Typically, we only really played football, so that's... Luckily, there is straight up the defender position in football, so that was really lucky for me. Okay, maybe just a little bit of hint of... No, that also doesn't seem right. Maybe almost the opposite, where I need to do it like this. Ooh, wait, that's something. That could be something for real. Okay. Okay, I think I should probably end things here for today, because I do have work tomorrow, and it is getting fairly late. But I think we've done some great progress on this. I think this is a good place to wrap up. Is anybody streaming right now? I think I'm just gonna end things here for today. Just realized that this is another point in favor of my idea that my brother and I really are opposites. Like, even down to our blood types, he's A plus and I'm A negative. Like, to use kickball as an example, my brother had a dynamite kick that was fast as hell, but if I were on defense and the ball came over to me, 9 times out of 10 I'd catch the ball. Had some real sticky hands. Sick. That's so cool. Alright. I'm going to end things here for today. I'll be dropping a schedule for next week soon enough. It's going to be the same thing as before, just no streams all week except Sundays. But in the meantime, take it easy. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you all later. Bye.